Chirag and welcome to this video, and this video is a full hands-on course on Amazon Textract. And in this 3-hour long video, almost all the topics of Amazon Textract are covered, ranging from performing OCR or extraction key value pair or extracting the tabular information from the image or the PDF document with the helper code and the CloudFormation template. So guys, after you go through this full video thoroughly, you will be able to work on any use case that is related to the extraction of the information like key value pairs or the table information or any sort of expense related information from the image or the PDF document very smoothly and efficiently. In this hands-on video, we are going to cover number of sections starting from Amazon Textract overview to Amazon Textract best practices. So without further ado, let's get started. In this section, I'm going to cover the overview of Amazon Textract service. But before we move on, I would like to request, if you have still not hit the subscribe button, then please do, and also don't forget to press the bell icon for notifications. So now moving along, let's try to understand what exactly Amazon Textract is and what it is capable of. So basically, Amazon Textract is the scalable document analysis service that can extract printed text, handwritten text and structured data and the relevant fields from the scanned images or any images or from the PDF documents. And it is also capable of processing the expense related documents like receipts, invoices at scale, which we have covered in one of the previous tutorial as a part of the Analyze Expense API overview. So ideally, Amazon Textract uses deep learning technology in the backend to detect and extract the information, and basically it is trained on millions of documents so that it can process any type of document efficiently without any explicit need of templates or configuration. Now to use the Amazon Textract, you don't need to have machine learning expertise, and it's basically easy to use. So if you have any use case or requirement which leads to OCR or automated data extraction from the forms, or a use case like text extraction for natural language processing, then you can consider using Amazon Textract. Correct. So that's basically the high level of what exactly Amazon Textract is and what it is capable of and how we can use that and for what purpose. Right now, let's have a look at what Amazon Textract can detect and extract. Okay, so here we are. So Amazon Textract can detect and extract the printed and handwritten text from the documents. And apart from that, it supports detection and extraction of printed text from the documents that are in Spanish, Italian, French, Portuguese and German language, apart from the English language it supports, right? And then it is also able to extract ASCII symbols, then structured data like tables and key value pairs and the relationships, and it also provides the confidence score, and basically confidence score will further help us in decision making for the detected text. Correct. So that's where the confidence score is very useful post extraction. And basically it can also explicitly extract label data, implied data and expense related line items from the services or goods, invoices and receipts. So this is what Amazon Textract is able to detect and extract. Now let's see what type of document formats are supported by Amazon Textract. So ideally, you can pass the documents which are in PNG, JPEG and PDF format to Amazon Textract. And now if you are making synchronous call, so for example, you are making the synchronous calls to the API, then you can submit the images as S3 objects, or you can directly pass them as the byte array. And for asynchronous API calls, you have to submit the file as the S3 objects. That means you need to upload the file to S3 bucket for all the asynchronous operation. Correct. So that's basically two type of call it supports, that is synchronous call and asynchronous call. Correct. So now as a next step, we will have a look at the APIs that are available as a part of Amazon Textract and its capability along with its pricing. So here I have this table which basically depicts the type of APIs that Amazon Textract is offering as a service. Correct. So before we move on, I want you to take note that the pricing mentioned here is for the US East 1 North Virginia region, and it may or may not be different for varying regions. So you can refer to the link that I have mentioned in the disclaimer for accurate pricing in reference to the asked region, correct? So here the very first is detect document text, as you can see over here. So if you want to perform simple OCR and extract all the text from the document, then you can use detect document text API. And the pricing for the first 1 million pages per month is $1.5 per 1000 pages and $0.6 per 1000 pages if you go beyond 1 million pages per month. So that's detect document text API. And then we have analyze document API. So ideally the API in the second and the third column, as you can see, it's same, right? And we can make the same API call, except we just have to change the parameters for the functionality that we want to achieve. So if we want to extract tables from the documents or key value pairs from the forms, then we can use analyze document API. And while we use analyze document API, the OCR will be performed as well. And now if we look at the pricing for the tables under Analyze Document API, then the pricing for the first 1 million pages per month is $15 per 1000 pages and $10 per 1000 pages if we go beyond 1 million pages per month, correct? So that's for the extraction of the table. And if you want to extract the forms under Analyze Expense API, then it's $50 per 1000 pages for the first 1 million pages per month and $40 per 1000 pages if you go beyond 1 million pages per month, correct? And finally, we have the Analyze Expense API. So if you want to extract the information in context to the expense related document, then you can use Analyze Expense API. So basically I have covered the Analyze Expense API overview in a separate video. So if you want to learn more about the same, then the link is in the video description. And if we talk about the pricing, then it's $10 per 1000 pages for the first 1 million pages per month. And if you go beyond 1 million pages per month, then it's $8 for 1000 pages. So basically this is the functionality that Amazon Textract supports, like OCR, extraction of the tables, extraction of forms in terms of key value pairs. And if you want to process any expense related document, then you can use Analyze Expense API with its relevant pricing. Okay, so now let's quickly have a look at the console. So here I am. So once you are in the console, search for Amazon Textract and navigate to Amazon Textract Management Console. And then you can click on Try Amazon Textract. So here we will quickly have a look at the sample document. So from the drop down, the form has been selected, and on the right panel you will be able to see that it's analyzed document, and under analyzed document we have the raw text. So basically when we use detect document text API, then this is the text that it will return as a part of the response with appropriate other metadata and the parameters, correct? And then if we want to use Analyze Document API for key value pairs, that means for forms, then this is the output that it looks like. So basically it will return the key value set pair for the forms. And then we have tables. So if you want to extract the tables, then again, as we just discussed, that we will use Analyze Document API with some sort of a change in parameters to extract the tables. And then if you want to extract the key value pair as well as the tables, then that also we can do that using API, correct? And then we have the human review. So for example, if you want to send a certain file for the human review based on the confidence score, then you can configure those parameters while making the API call. So that we will have a look at later stage, correct? Now from the drop down, I will simply select the receipt, and as you can see, the Analyze Expense API option is enabled. And here we have the key value pair and the expense line item over here, correct? So again, if you want to know more about the Analyze Expense API, then the link of the video is in the video description, so have a look. So now let's quickly have a look at the benefits of using Amazon Textract. So basically it's easy to integrate with the existing application. So you can easily create a small module using AWS services and expose that functionality via API endpoints, and you can just make an API call from your existing application if you want to have that functionality in that, right? And then it will scale, right? It's scalable document analysis service, so you don't have to worry about the scalability, so it will automatically scale. And then we don't need to implement anything from scratch because it's readily available, so we don't need any machine learning expertise, right? And the pricing is transparent, and it's able to perform OCR, extract structured data like tables, forms, key value pairs, and it's also able to process expense related documents, correct? So these are the few of the benefits of using Amazon Textract. Now let's quickly have a look at the certain limits for the Amazon Textract service. So here I have this table. So the very first is accepted file format. So basically for synchronous operation, PNG and JPEG file type is supported except JPEG 2000. And for asynchronous operation, PNG, JPEG and PDF file type is supported except JPEG 2000, correct? Then let's have a look at the file size limits. So you can pass 10 MB of file in terms of JPEG and PNG and 500 MB for PDF files. Then for PDF specific limits, it can have a maximum of 3000 pages with a maximum height and width of 40 inches and 2880 points. And again, PDFs cannot contain JPEG 2000 images. Then if you look at the text alignment, then text should be horizontally aligned for better results, and vertically aligned text is not supported at this point of time. And then if we talk about the supported languages, then it's English, French, German, Italian, Portuguese and Spanish text detection. And while we use the document in any of these languages, it's not going to return the detected language as a part of the response. So if you pass, for example, a document in German, then it will perform the OCR or whatever functionality that you want to apply, right? And it will return the response, but at the same time, it's not going to return the language it detected, right? So it's not going to return that the document was in German language, correct? So keep that thing in mind. And then for character size, the text should have a minimum height of 15 pixels. And finally, we have character type. So as we know that it supports handwritten and printed character recognition. So you can refer more about the limits from this link that I have mentioned in the disclaimer. Okay, so guys, that's all for this section. In this section, I'm going to take you through on how to extract text from a simple receipt using Amazon Textract via Lambda function and the S3 bucket. So guys, before we move on, I want to add an exciting update by AWS here regarding the AWS Textract price reduction. So the update is that there is up to 32% price reduction in 8 AWS regions and up to 50% reduction in asynchronous job processing times. So basically you can refer this table just to compare the old and the new pricing. So basically the price that we discussed in the previous video might differ now. So please refer to this updated pricing for Amazon Textract, and I'm going to post this link in the video description. So please check that out. So now moving along. So guys, as you can see on my screen, I have this very simple flow that is over here, and we are going to implement this flow in this video. So the flow is like the user will upload a file to the Amazon S3 bucket, and that will trigger the Lambda function, and we are going to write some logic in the Lambda function or the code that will call the Amazon Textract service, and Amazon Textract service will return the OCR or the extracted information in the form of JSON, and that is something that we are going to parse in this video, correct? So this is a very simple flow. And the invocation is going to be the synchronous invocation. So here we are not going to perform any sort of asynchronous invocation. So keep that thing in mind. So now let's get started. So the very first thing that we are going to do is to create the S3 bucket. So navigate to AWS Management Console, search for S3 service and click on that. And once you are within S3 Management Console, click on create bucket. So here I'm going to give the bucket name. I will say Textract video tutorial. And then I'm going to leave rest of the option as it is, and I will simply say create bucket. Now here we have successfully created the bucket. So here it is, that is Textract-video-tutorial. You can create a directory if you want. So now before we move on, I want to highlight that here we are simply going to perform the OCR or to extract the text. And here we are not going to detect the table or the key value pair from the uploaded document. So this video is regarding a simple text extraction or the text analysis from the receipt, right? So we are going to simply extract the raw text from the receipt, and we are not going to detect the table or key value pair within the receipt. Okay. So now as a next step, we will click on services. We will look for Lambda and click on that. And once you are within Lambda Management Console, click on top right corner, that is create function. Give the function name, I will say Textract -lambda. And within runtime, I'm going to select Python 3.9, that is the latest runtime for Python. And within permission, I will say create a new role with basic lambda permissions. So here at this point of time, we are not going to use an existing role. Instead, we will let the lambda function create the IAM role for us. And once that role is created, we will go ahead to that role and attach the permission that we want. Okay. So I will select create a new role with a basic lambda permission and say create function. So here, as you can see, we have successfully created the textra-lambda function. Okay, now as a next step, we are going to click on configuration and say permission from the left panel. And here you will be able to see the execution role that the lambda function has created. So click on that and it will redirect you to the IAM management console. So here we have a policy that is attached. So apart from this policy, we are going to attach two more policies. So click on attach policies. So the very first policy that we are going to add is AWS lambda execute, lambda execute. Attach this. So this will basically provides both get access to the S3 and full access to CloudWatch logs. And apart from this, since we are going to call the Amazon Textract service from the lambda function, we will also require permission for the Amazon Textract service. So search for Amazon Textract. So here at this point of time, I'm going to attach Amazon Textract full access. But if you don't want to provide full access, if you want to define some custom permission, then you can create the custom policy for that. Okay. So I'm going to click on attach policy. And here we have successfully configured the IAM role for the lambda function. So now I'm going to close this. So now as a next step, we are going to add a trigger over here. So you can simply click on add trigger within function overview, or you can also click on triggers from the left panel. Either way it would work. Okay. So say add trigger. Here we will say S3, because we want to invoke or call this lambda function whenever any file gets uploaded into the S3 bucket that we have just created. Okay. So that's the reason we are going to add a trigger over here. And now within bucket, we are going to look for the S3 bucket that we have just created, that is Textract video tutorial. So select that. And I think rest of the option will remain as it is until and unless you want to change the event type, or if you want to add a prefix or a suffix. Okay. So here the event type is all object create event. So whenever any object is created, this lambda function should get triggered, right? So that's basically event type. And then if you want to set a trigger from the specific directory, then you can add a prefix of the directory name. And then we have suffix. If you want to trigger this lambda function only, for example, .jpg file is uploaded, then you can say .jpg over here. So whenever the non-jpg file gets uploaded, like for example, if someone upload .png file, then this lambda function will not get triggered until and unless .jpeg file getting uploaded in the S3 bucket. Okay, so that's basically suffix. And finally, we are going to click on this checkbox and we will say add. So here we have successfully created the S3 bucket. We have successfully configured the IAM role, and then we have successfully attached or created the trigger for the lambda function. Now as a next step, we are going to click on code over here and scroll down to code source. So here, as I mentioned earlier, that we are going to add some code that would be responsible for calling the Amazon Textract, correct? So let's modify this. So here I have already pushed the code on the repository, that is aws-tutorial-code, and I'm going to paste the link of this code in the video description so you can have a look. So I'm going to copy this code, go back to Amazon Lambda, and I'm going to paste it over here. I will say save and deploy. So now as a next step, I'm going to take you through this code at the very high level. Okay, so basically on line number 9 and 10, we are importing two packages, that is JSON and the Boto3. Okay, and then on line number 12, we have defined a function that would be responsible for extracting text from the response. So we will have a look at it in some time. Now let's have a look at the line number 19. So here we have the lambda handler function. On line number 20, we have defined the Boto3 client object of the Textract service, right, to invoke the Amazon Textract. And then on line number 21, we are checking if there is any data in the event. So basically when lambda function gets triggered via S3 bucket, it will have some information in the event, right? So we are checking if there is an event. then it will fetch the bucket name and the file name from that event. Okay, and then on line number 26 we are printing the bucket name and the file name. And finally on line number 28 we are making a call to the Amazon Textract API using detect document text. So again, as I mentioned earlier, that in this video we are simply going to perform OCR, that is the text analysis, and here we are not intended to detect the tables or the key value pairs in the document. So that is something that I'm going to cover in the upcoming video. Okay, so here we have defined textract.detect text document, detect document text, sorry. And then within document we have given the reference for the S3 object. Now in case if you don't want to pass the S3 reference, instead you want to read a file in the binary form and you want to pass that bytes data, then you can also do that using detect document text. So instead of document you need to define bytes over here. Okay, but at this point of time we are going to use the S3 reference. So here once the execution is completed, it will return some response, right? So that response will be stored in this variable, and that would be a JSON response. And finally whatever response that we are getting, we are printing it on line number 36, right? So basically on line number 39 we are calling extract_text method, which basically accepts two parameters, that is the response that we have received from the Amazon Textract and the extract by parameter, correct? So basically the response that we get from the Amazon Textract is kind of complex, and it does not provide the raw text in line by line or the word by word format. So that's the reason we need to parse that response, and to parse that response we have defined extract_text method, and that will basically return the raw text from the response that we have received from the Amazon Textract. And once the response is parsed via extract_text method, we are printing the raw text, right? And finally we are returning a response saying document processed successfully. So since we have successfully deployed the code, as a next step we are going to upload a file to the S3 bucket to trigger this lambda function. So let's go ahead and upload it. Now here I have the sample receipt, let me quickly show you. So I'm going to upload this receipt into the S3 bucket, and that should trigger the lambda function. Okay, so let me drag and drop, and I will say upload. So here we have successfully uploaded the file. Now to check the response, navigate back to the lambda function, click on configuration, click on monitor and say view logs in CloudWatch. And here as you can see the lambda function is invoked. So click on this log and we would be able to see the response. So here we have the bucket name, that is textract-video tutorial, and the file name that we have uploaded, correct? And then we have the response over here, as you can see. So this is the Textract response that we have received, and there is a lot more information in here. And finally what we have did is we have processed this response and simply printed the text in the raw format. So basically this text is coming from the function that we have created, that is extract_text. Okay, so now what we are going to do is I am quickly going to walk you through this response that we have received from the Textract. So I'm going to copy this. Here I have this JSON formatter, so I'm going to paste it over here, and I will simply say format beautify. Okay, so this is how the response looks like from the Textract while we perform text analysis, right? So the very first thing that we have is the document metadata, which basically contains the number of pages. So metadata is about the document, like as I mentioned, how many pages are detected. So at this point of time it's the single page receipt, that is the reason the value is 1 over here. And then we have blocks. So basically blocks will contain the array of block objects that contain the text that's detected in the document. Okay, so that's basically blocks. And now let's have a look at the block type. So here the very first block type is page, and if we scroll down then we will get to see the block type as line, and if we scroll down further then we will be able to see the block type as word. Okay, so basically block type is the type of text item that's recognized. So now since we are performing the detect document text or the text analysis or the text detection, the block type would be page, word and line. So apart from these three block type, you would not be able to see any other block type while you are using detect document text. Okay, so that's block type. And then we have geometry over here. So this would be responsible for giving the information about the location of the recognized text on the image. So you can use this geometry information to draw the bounding box on the actual receipt. And then we have ID over here, so that's the ID for the block type page. Okay, and after that we have relationship. So basically relationship will depicts the parent child relationship information. So here, while we are using detect document text, a line object would have the child blocks for each word block that's part of the line of the text. So let's quickly have a look, right? So let me scroll down, and so here we have text as receipt. Let's not look at that. Let's look at this one, that is East Repair Incorporation, that is INC. So here within this block you would have one ID, right, that is associated with this block type line, and then you would be able to see the relationship that this ID, so this is parent and it has the child IDs, right? So that will represent some sort of information. So as I mentioned here, the block type line object has child blocks for each word block. So what does that word block mean? So let me copy this ID. Okay, copy, and I'm going to search for that ID. So I will say enter. Here, as you can see, here we have the same ID, and here the block type is word, and you would be able to see the text as East. Okay, so similarly it has how many child ID? That is 3 child ID. And why is that? Because here we have 3 words, right? So this line item is associated with the individual word. So one ID is for East, one ID is for repair, and one ID is for INC. Okay, so let's have a look at the second ID. That's the child ID, and this would be associated with the block type word here, as you can see. Okay, and the word is, or the text is repair, right? East Repair. And if you look at the third ID, then it would be INC. Okay, so that is how the relationship is mentioned over here. So you can look at that. So here this is the page ID, and this is all the child ID. So basically these IDs will represent the block type line, and within the block type line the child ID will represent the block type word. Okay, so that's a relationship. And now if we look at what other information that we have, so we have the confidence score. So this confidence score will depict that with how much confidence it is able to detect or predict the text in the receipt, right? So it is with 99.86%, and the text was receipt, right? So that's confidence. And again, each block type would have the geometry information. And here one more information I would like to highlight is that, so that would be within the block type word. So let me quickly search for one of the child ID. So let's consider this. Copy, and I'm going to paste. Let's look for it. So here we are. And now when we look at the block type word, so here we will have confidence, here we will have text, that is receipt, and then here we have one more a key value pair, that is text type. So here text type will represent that whether the detected text is printed or the handwritten, right? So at this point of time the receipt is printed, so that's why the text type is printed over here. Then again we will have the geometry information for the specific word itself. Okay, so at the very high level this is how the response looks like, and this is how you can interpret it. And finally at the very end you will get some sort of response metadata, which will contain request ID, status code, and some headers, and the retry attempts, and finally the detect document text model version, that is 1.0, right? So this is how the detect document text response looks like, and this is how you can interpret the relationship and the confidence score, the text and the text type. And then finally you would be able to use the geometry information to draw the bounding box, right? So I'm planning, or I'm thinking to do the separate video on the geometry, right? So where I will show you that how you can draw the bounding box on the receipt for the detected information. Correct. So let me know if you want me to do separate tutorial on geometry. Correct. So guys, this is how you can basically extract the text from the given receipt using S3 bucket and the trigger and the lambda function. Correct. So I know this is not the full flow. So in real case scenario, none of the user is going to log in into the console and upload the file into the S3 bucket. right, to get this information. But in real scenario, we would be using the API gateways, or we might be using the pre-signed URLs, right? So that is something is in scope for this tutorial series. So I'm going to have a video on end-to-end receipt processing, where we will be using the API endpoints, right? But at later point of time. So before that full-fledged tutorial, I want to cover this components in pieces, right? Like we did for detect document text, and then I explained you the response, right? How it looks like, and how we can extract all the text using this function that is extract text, right? So as you can see, let me quickly show you. So this is how the response look like, and I just showed you that at the line level or the raw text, the response looks something like this. So this is the output of the extract underscore text, right? So this extracted text is at the line level, right? So you would be able to see that receipt, then we have ist repair inc. Even if you look at this response, so let me show you. So here the first line is receipt, correct? And then the second line is ist repair inc. The third line is 1912 harvest lane. So if we look at this, so here we have ist repair inc, then 1912 harvest lane, right? So this is at the line level. But if you want to extract the text at the specific word level, so the output would look something like this: receipt, comma, ist, comma, repair, comma, inc, right? Then what you need to do is, all you need to do is to modify this parameter, that is extract by line, right? Instead of line, you need to mention word, correct? So that's how you can extract the text. So I was talking about the full-fledged video tutorial. So yeah, before that full-fledged video tutorial, I want to cover each of the components like we did for detect document text, and then I will be doing for the analyze document, which will basically return the table information and the key value pair. So we will have a look at it one by one, and once we have the overall idea about each of the component, then it would be straightforward and easy for us to implement end-to-end solution. So guys, that is all for this section. In this section, I'm going to take you through on how to extract key value pairs and tabular information from a receipt or a document using Amazon Textract via Lambda function. So guys, as you can see on my screens, this is the same flow that we have followed in the previous tutorial. So in this tutorial, the flow is going to remain as it is, and we are going to reuse the resources that we have created in the previous tutorial, except for the part that we need to update the Lambda function code in order to extract key value pairs and the tabular information. Okay, so we are going to modify that Lambda function to satisfy our needs. So let's get started. So before we move on, let's quickly have a look at the forms and the tables, how it looks like on the console. So this is the sample document, that is the form document, right? So here we have the raw text, and that is something that we have covered in the previous video. Then we have forms. So forms are nothing but the key value pairs. So here we have like full name, that is the key, and Jane Doe is a name or a value, right? So that's basically key value pair. So here you can see all the key value pairs that has been extracted or detected by the Amazon Textract. And then we have tabular information, that is tables. So if you have a tabular information or the table in any receipt and you want to extract that kind of structure, then you can use Amazon Textract to extract such information. So here, as you can see, we have the information of the table that we can see on the left hand side, right? So now, since we have an idea about how forms looks like and how tables looks like after it is extracted, of course, once we receive the response, we have to parse that response in order to fetch this kind of information. So that could be a little complex over there to parse information from the response, correct? So let's get started. Let's navigate to AWS Management Console and open Lambda Management Console from there, because we want to modify the Lambda function code in order to extract key value pairs and the tabular information. So I have created Textract-Lambda in the previous video, I guess. So let me open that. And here we have that code. So again, I have already posted the code on the GitHub repository for extracting key value pairs and the table information. So I'm going to copy the code from there, and I will paste the link of that GitHub code in the video description so you can refer that. So here I have two files basically. So I have created the parser.py as the helper file to parse the response that we are going to receive from the Amazon Textract, right? So the very first thing that we are going to do is open the lambda function.py, and we are going to copy this code. Copy, and I'm going to replace this code with the new one. I will save it and say deploy. Now here in this code, what we are doing is on line number 13, if you can have a look, then we are importing few functions from the parser, right? So that's the helper file that I have created. So in order to reflect that, we also need to copy the code from parser.py. So I'm going to open parser.py, and I'm going to copy this helper functions. Go back to console, right click on the directory and say new file, and I will say parser.py. Say enter, open that file and paste the code that we have just copied, save it and say deploy. Let me close this. Now I will quickly take you through this code at the very high level. So from line number 10 to line number 20, we are importing the packages that we require in order to send the request to the Amazon Textract and parse the response, right? So that's where we are using JSON, Boto3, pprint to pretty print the response. And then we are importing a couple of functions from the parser.py, that is from here, okay? So here we are importing extract underscore text. So this is the same function. If you want to, for example, extract the raw text or the text line by line or by word, then you can use this method. So this is the same method that we have created in the previous video, but I have just placed that method in the parser.py and importing it from there. Okay. Then we have a map word ID. So in an individual response, whatever response that we get, the text is always represented as a part of block type word, and it has the specific ID, right? So even if we look at block type line, then it does not contains the actual text. Instead, it contains the relationship, and the type of the relationship is child, and that's where we have few ID, and that ID basically represent the block type word which contains the text, right? So that's where we are mapping the word ID or the particular ID with the word. And then we have function for extract table information. Then for key value pair extraction, the very first thing that we are doing is mapping the key, then we are mapping the value, and finally we are passing the key value information to get the actual key value pairs. Okay, so that's where I have created a couple of helper function. So this is the initial code. Maybe I will improve this code in future, modify this, and I'm going to push that update on the GitHub itself. So you will be able to get the latest update of that code from there. Now going back to the Lambda function. So here we have the Lambda handler function. On line 24, we are defining the Boto3 object of Textract service, right? Then on line 25, we are checking if there is an event. So we are checking if there is any information in the event. Then we are proceeding further. Then we are fetching the file object to get the bucket name and the file name, because that is something that we will need in order to pass it to the Amazon Textract, right? We need to pass the reference of the file name, that where it is located and what is the name of the file, to the Amazon Textract in order to perform the extraction part, right? So that's where we need that information. On line number 30, we are printing the bucket name and the file name. Now on line number 32, here we are using textract.analyze document. So earlier, if we want to perform only OCR, then we were using detect document text method, right? But since we want to extract key value pairs and the tabular information, we are using the another method, that is analyze underscore document. This method, that is analyze underscore document, will perform OCR by default. So if you want to grab the line by line information or word by word information, then it's going to return that information as well. Okay, so whatever detect document text will do, analyze document will also do. But in addition to the OCR, it will also perform the extraction of the key value pair or the tables based on your requirements or whatever parameter that you are passing from here. Okay, Now within analyze document, we are passing the reference of the file that we have uploaded. So within document, we are saying it's the S3 object, and then we are passing the reference, that is the file is in this bucket and the name of the file is whatever the file name is. And then if you have enabled versioning, then you can also pass the version of that file, that which version Amazon Textract should pick, right? But at this point of time, I don't have versioning enabled. Now finally, we have feature types. Now here you need to tell Amazon Textract that what kind of information you want to extract from the document. So for example, if you want to extract key value pairs, then you have to pass forms, right? And then if you want to also extract the tabular information, then you will pass forms comma tables. And for example, if you only want to extract the tabular information, then you have to pass tables only. You need to remove these forms, right? So you can play around with this. So you can say I want only tabular information, then you can remove these forms over here and you can only pass tables. But at this point of time, if you want both the information like key value pairs as well as the tabular information, so you need to pass both the keyword, right? That is forms and tables. So that's where it will extract key value pairs and the tabular information as well. So you can play around with these parameters. And finally, after that, on line number 42, we are printing the response that we are getting from the textract.analyze underscore document. Okay. And then on line number 44, we are extracting the text, that is the OCR information from the response that we are getting. So if you want to extract the text line by line, then you can pass this parameter, that is extract by line, or if you want individual word, right, then you can say word over here. So it's similar to whatever we did in the previous video. Then on line 45, we are creating a mapping, that is a key value pair, that ID colon the whatever word or the text it has, right? So it will be easy later on to look up, right? So that's why we are creating the word ID mapping. Then on line 46, we are extracting the tabular information or the table information. Then if you want to extract the key value pair, then here we are performing on line 47 is the key mapping followed by the value mapping, and then we are passing both the mapping to the get kv underscore map method that will basically return the key value pair, right? That whatever, for example, it will return full name colon Jane Doe, right? So that's the key value pair. And finally, on line 51 to 53, we are printing that information. And on line 55, we have a return statement that is status code 200 and some message. So this is the very high level of the code. So you can go through this parser.py if you want to deep dive into how it is parsing the response. And as I mentioned, I'm going to optimize this function at later point of time. Okay. So now I think we have done all the changes that was required. So here we don't need to modify any sort of permission or anything, or we don't need to set up any S3 bucket trigger because that is being set up already in the previous video. And in case if you are directly looking at this video, then I will recommend that please refer part 2 of this video first so that you will be on the same page, right? Now as the next step, we are going to open the S3 bucket where we have set up the trigger. So in my case, it's Textract video tutorial. So here is the bucket. And here we have one file that is sample receipt, but instead we are going to upload the same file again. So I'm going to say sample underscore receipt, say upload. So here if everything is configured correctly, then we will be able to see the response in the CloudWatch. So go back to Lambda function, say monitor, say view logs in CloudWatch. So as you can see, we have the logs that has been populated. That is the latest one. So click on that. So now as you can see, here we have the information that we have printed, that is bucket name and the file name, followed by the response that we are printing, whatever response that we are getting from the Amazon Textract, and that is something over here. Then we have table information. So as you can see, so each list basically represent the individual row, right? So here this is one row, then we have a second row over here, okay? And wherever the information is empty or blank, over there I have placed space like this, correct? So here it is able to extract two tables. So let's compare, right? So let me go back to Amazon Textract console and let me drag and drop this file over here. So we are just verifying. So I am going to click on tables. So here, as you can see, we have two tables, right? That is this receipt information, then we have sub items information, correct? So here, as you can see, this is blank, so that's where I have placed space over that, so you can modify as per your requirement, right? So this is table number 1, and then we have the receipt table over here, correct? So it is able to extract two tables. Then we have key value pairs. So here, as you can see, total $154, receipt date, due date. Let's quickly verify it. Let me click on form. So here, as you can see, we have total, then receipt date, ship to, terms and condition. So here we have terms and condition, ship to, sales tax. So this is how the key value pair looks like. And finally, at the very end, we are printing the OCR text that is being extracted, I think, line by line. So basically, this is how you can extract the tabular information as well as key value pair using Lambda function via Amazon Textract, correct? So now let's quickly go through the response that we have here. Let me open that, copy. So here I have this JSON formatter open. Let me copy and paste. I will say format beautify. Now, as you can see, here we have the response. So in the previous tutorial, we had gone through a few of the block type and a few other parameters, right? Like geometry, polygon, ID, relationship. So in this video, what we will quickly have a look at is the block type table. So let me search for table. So here we have block type table, and under that we have confidence score, geometry information, polygon information, and its ID. And similarly, it has relationship, type as child, and this is the list of a relationship or the child object that it has. So this individual ID will represent block type cell, right? So what does it mean? That this table contains this cell, okay? So if I have to copy this child ID, copy and paste, and I will search for it. So as you can see, it is representing block type cell over here, right? So this is the ID of the block type cell under that table. And within block type cell, we have the confidence score, row index, that on which index this particular information has been identified or detected. Then we have column index, row span, if any, column span, if any. Then again, we have geometry and polygon information. And then it has its own ID, right? And again, this ID has the relationship that is of type child. Now here, as you can see, we are unable to see the text for the particular cell, right? So as I mentioned earlier also, that all the text is visible in the block type word. So now if I have to copy this child ID and search for it, then this will be the ID of block type word, as you can see, okay? And here we will be able to find the text, that is text is quantity for that particular cell that is on row index 1 and column index 1, right? We can verify as well. So as you can see, this is the row index 1 and the column index 1, and it's QTY, okay? So basically that is how the information is being represented over here, correct? So that's similar for all the cell types and the block type table, okay? Now let's quickly have a look at the key value pair. So here we have block type key value set basically for the key value pair information. Now here we have again confidence and the standard terms, right? That is geometry, polygon, and its ID. But what's new here is that under relationship we have type as value. So it means that this is a key, right? This ID represents key, and the value of this key is under this ID, okay? And then if you want to identify whether it is a key or a value, then you need to have a look at the entity types. So if it is a key, then it's the key, and for values the entity types would be value, okay? So you can have a look over here. So entity types is value, okay? Let's quickly parse this. So here we have key value set. Now the value of this key is under this ID. Let me copy, find it, paste it over here. So here is the ID, and this key value set, and the entity type is value, okay? So basically that key and this value are related, okay? And again, here we are not able to see any of the text, that what is the text of the key and what is the text of the value. Okay, and for that you need to specifically refer to the relationship of type child. Okay, so this is the value. Let me quickly search for it. What is the text? So it's basically $154. Okay, and then if we look at the text of the key, here it is, and the key was this one, right? And what is the value of that key, or basically text? Then it is total, right? So total colon $154, right? So that's the first key value pair. Even if we look over here within forms, then here we will be able to see that total $154.06, right? So basically this is how the key value pair information is present in the response that you get. So you need to parse this, and that's where I have written the helper function to parse this information. Okay, so guys, basically this is how you can extract the key value pairs and the tabular information from the receipt or the document that you upload. So guys, that's all for this section. In this section, I will take you through on how to extract the text from a multi-page PDF file and how we can save the output as a CSV. And as a part of the CSV, we will have two columns which are page number and the text. So we will store the text of each page as an individual row along with the page number. So let's get started. So we will go through this diagram first, as you can see on my screen. So I will quickly explain you the overall flow. So here we have the PDF file. So the user will upload a PDF file to the S3 bucket within async-doc-text directory or a folder, which will in turn trigger the Lambda function, which would be responsible for creating the Amazon Textract job. So here we are going to perform simple OCR or detect document text. But since we are dealing with the multi-page PDF file, this is going to be the asynchronous invocation. So earlier what was happening is that while we invoke or call the Amazon Textract service along with the details of the file that we have uploaded, we instantly get the response back from the Amazon Textract. But in this case, since this is going to be an asynchronous invocation, what this Lambda function will do, it will simply pass on the details or the reference details of the file to the Amazon Textract, and Amazon Textract will return the job ID as a response. Okay, so this Lambda function is basically responsible for creating the Amazon Textract job, and it will pass on the uploaded file details. Correct? Once the job is created, Amazon Textract will perform the desired operation. For example, in this case, it's an OCR that we want to perform. And once that job is completed, it will store the response into the S3 bucket, which is in the Textract-output directory. So this directory name can be anything, you can change if you want, but in this case, or for the purpose of this tutorial, we are going to keep it as Textract-output. And now once the job is completed, the response is stored into this S3 bucket, and then it's going to send a notification to the Amazon SNS. Now how this Amazon Textract will know that after the job completion, it should send a notification or a message to the Amazon SNS? It's because while creating the job, we will also pass on the configuration of the SNS topic, right? To which we want to send the notification or a message once the job is completed, correct? And then once the job is completed, it will send a notification to the SNS topic, and this SNS topic will trigger the Lambda function, that is a process response, right? So this Lambda function is responsible for processing the response that is being stored in the Textract-output directory in the Amazon S3 bucket. Correct. Now to deal with the CSV file, we are using pandas as a package, which does not comes inbuilt as a part of the Lambda function runtime. So that's where we are going to utilize Lambda layers for the for deploying pandas, and then we are going to attach that Lambda layers into this Amazon Lambda function. Correct. So I have already covered a tutorial on how to create the Lambda layer for the pandas package in one of the previous tutorials. So I will post a link of that video in the video description if you want to refer that in detail. But in case if you want to just follow along with this video, then I have already uploaded the package for the pandas library. That is for Python runtime 3.9, right? So I had already uploaded that, so you can even utilize that as well. Okay, now this Lambda function will process the response, right, that is being stored in the Textract -output directory, right, based on the job ID that it will have. And then once the response is processed, this Lambda function is going to store it as the CSV file in the Amazon S3 bucket in the CSV directory. So basically this is the overall flow that we are going to follow throughout this video, and at this point of time we are going to create all the resources manually, correct? But at the end of this video I will also share the CloudFormation template which you can utilize to deploy these resources automatically using that CloudFormation template. So stay tuned. So now let's get started. So the very first thing that we are going to do is that we are going to create the Amazon S3 bucket. So navigate to Amazon Management Console and search for S3 and click on that. Now once you are within S3 Management Console, we are going to create a new bucket. So I will say create a bucket. I will give it a name. I will say Textract -async, something like this. Okay, process, and then I will say create a bucket. Now the bucket is created successfully. Here it is. Now within this bucket we are going to create 3 directories, which are async doc-text, where we are going to upload the file. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, create folder. I will say paste it over here and say create folder. Now the next directory is going to be the Textract -output. So I'll say copy, again create a new directory or a folder, say create folder, and finally the third folder in which we are going to store the CSV file. So I will simply say CSV and say create folder. Now here we have successfully created the Amazon S3 bucket along with the directories that we need. And now as the next step we are going to create the SNS topic, correct? So SNS topic is over here. So go back to Amazon Management Console, click on services, search for SNS, click on that. Now here we are going to create a new topic. So I will say topic from the left panel, say create topic. I will say standard, give it a name. I will say Textract async notification, and then I will leave rest of the option as it is and say create topic. Now here we have successfully created the SNS topic. Now here we need to even create the subscription for this topic, but that is something we will do at later point of time after we create the Lambda function. Okay, so we will come back in a while over here. Now as the next step, what we will need permissions, right? So that's where we are going to search for IAM, and we are going to create 2 roles. Now once you are within IAM Management Console, click on roles from the left panel, say create role. Now one role we are going to create for the Lambda function. So here within the use case we are going to select Lambda as a service because we are creating this role for the Lambda functions. Okay, so we will create a single IAM role for both the Lambda function. So for that we will need AWS Lambda execute, This will basically give permission to the S3 bucket as well as the CloudWatch logs. And then finally we will also require permission to create the job within Amazon Textract. So that's where we will also need permission for Textract. So here I will say Textract full access, but you can also opt out for service role. but you need to check whether this permission suffice. Okay, I don't think it suffice to create the job within Amazon Textract, because within action it only says SNS publish. So we will go on with the Amazon Textract full access, but I think you should consider creating the custom policy for this instead of giving the full access until and unless it's necessary. So I have also covered how we can create the custom policy in, I think, one of the earlier tutorial. I'm not sure in which, but I will see if I can post the link of that video in the video description, so you can narrow down the permission over here as well. Okay, so now once you are done with the attachment of the permission policy, say next tags, I will leave it as it is. Say next review, give the role name. I will say lambda underscore textract underscore async. Okay, something like this, async. And I will say create a role. Now here we have successfully created the IAM role for the lambda function. In fact, for both of the lambda function. Now we need to create another role. Now this role would be responsible for giving permission to the Amazon Textract to publish a message to the SNS topic. Correct? So now after the job completion, this Amazon Textract need to send some notification or message to the SNS topic, but for that it will require permission to push or send the message to the Amazon SNS, right? So that's where we need to create another role for this. Okay, so here we are going to select Textract. Let me search for it. Here we are, Textract, and we will say next permission. And here it will list only one role, that is Amazon Textract service role. But due to some reason, this role does not work because Amazon Textract is unable to send notification to the SNS topic. So what we will do is we are going to attach one more set of permission here. So let me create this role first. I'll say Textract underscore SNS permission, or maybe I will say async, and say create role. Now once the role is created, let's open this role, and once you are there, click on attach policies. Here I am going to provide SNS permission, so that is Amazon SNS full access. Again, you can create the custom policy for this instead of attaching the full access. So now here we have successfully created the IAM role for the lambda function as well as for the Amazon Textract, right? Now as the next step, we are going to create the lambda function. Okay, so we are done with the Amazon S3, we are done with the Amazon SNS topic, but we need to revisit it later for creating the subscription. Now we are going to create this lambda function along with the lambda layer. Okay, so let's first create the lambda layer. So navigate to Amazon Management Console, search for lambda, and navigate to Lambda Management Console. Now once you are there, click on layers under additional resources from the left panel, and once you are there, say create layer. Now here we need to provide some configuration like name, so I'll say pandas underscore 3 underscore 9 underscore textract, something like this. Now here we are not going to upload a zip file, instead we are going to upload a file from Amazon S3. So I already have that zip file uploaded in the Amazon S3 bucket, so let me open that. Now here I have created another bucket earlier, which is reference bucket code, and within this I have this pandas-39.zip. Okay, so I'm going to copy the object URL and paste it over here. Okay, now in case if you want to reuse this zip file that I have created, then what you can do is you can navigate to this repository, that is aws-tutorial-code, and within that I have the zip file that is pandas_39.zip. so you can download this and upload the zip file to any of the S3 bucket, and once the file is uploaded, you can copy the object URL and use it as a reference within lambda layers. Okay, and if you want to go through the detailed video of how to create Lambda layers, then I will post the link of that in the video description. Okay, now here we have a new option, that is compatible architecture. So this is optional, but I will go with x86_64. Okay, and within compatible runtime I will select Python 3.9. okay, if you want to learn more about this compatible architecture, then you can click on this info, right, and it will give you the description of what exactly it is. Okay, and say create. So here we have successfully created the Lambda layer for the pandas library. Now as the next step, we are going to create the Lambda function. So navigate to Lambda management console and say create function from the top right corner, and give the function name. I will say Textract underscore async underscore job creation. Okay, so this is our first Lambda function. If we look over here, then this is our first Lambda function over here. Okay, where we are going to set the trigger, and within runtime we will say Python 3.9. architecture we will say 86_64. Within permission we are going to select use an existing role, and we will say Textract, that is lambda underscore textract underscore async. This is the same role that we have just created before some time. Okay, so say create function. Now here we have successfully created the first Lambda function. So what we will do is we will also configure the code source, or we are going to copy and paste the code from this repository. So here I have two files. One is responsible for creating the job, and other one is responsible for processing the response. Okay, so let me check async response process. This is the second Lambda function. So we are going to open this Lambda function or the file, and we are going to copy this code and paste it over here. Paste, save, deploy. Okay, so here we have successfully configured this Lambda function, and we have also copy and pasted the source code. So this is basically responsible for creating the Amazon Textract job for whichever file that we are going to upload. Okay, but apart from that, we also need to configure the environment variable, okay, which is output bucket name, where we want to kind of store the output. And do we have any prefix that we want to add? So prefix is going to be the textract-output, that is the directory name. And then we are also going to pass the notification channel, which is SNS topic ARN as well as the SNS role ARN, right? So we are going to copy and paste the IAM role ARN for the permission. Okay, so let's first configure this environment variables. So let me open configuration, say environment variables. I will say edit over here. I will say edit environment variable. Oops, let me open the Lambda function in new tab as well, so I can copy and paste the environment variables. So the very first is output bucket name. So say copy, paste it over here. The output bucket name is Textract async process, right? Because we want to store the response of the OCR within Textract-output directory. So that's where we are going to copy and paste this bucket name. Then we are going to add another environment variable, which is output S3 prefix, which is going to be the Textract-output, right? Within this directory, we need to store the response. Another environment variable, which is SNS topic ARN for the notification channel. So from here we will get the ARN of this topic. So I will say copy and paste it over here. And finally we need to provide permission to the Amazon Textract so that it is able to send the notification to this SNS topic ARN. Right, so that's where we are going to copy and paste the ARN of the Textract_SNS_async role that we have created earlier. So copy this ARN and paste it over here and say save. Now here we have successfully configured the environment variables which we will need to execute this code. Okay, so here we will get all the information within this code, and finally on line 22 we are defining the Boto3 client of the Textract service, and then we are checking if there is an event, then we are fetching the file information, right, like bucket name and the file name. And finally on line number 30 we are using textract.start document text detection to create the job within Amazon Textract for extracting text from whichever file that we are going to upload. Okay, and within this we are passing the document location, that where is that file, in which bucket, and what is the file name, and the output configuration, that means where we want to store the information after text extraction. So we want to store it in this bucket with this prefix. And finally, once the job is completed, do we want to send the notification somewhere? So we are saying yes, send the notification to the SNS topic that we have created. And here is the permission to send the message or whatever notification, right? And finally on line 35, we are checking if it returns status code 200, then it says job created successfully, else it's going to return 500 and we will say job creation failed. Okay, so that is the high level of this code, right? And finally we also need to add the trigger over here, which is the S3 bucket trigger. So we will say S3, select the bucket name. So the bucket name is Textract async process. We will say event type all job create events, and we will add the prefix which is async-doc-text. Okay, because we are going to upload the file in this directory or in this prefix, and then suffix we will say it should be .pdf. Okay, and we acknowledge over here and say add. Okay, so the very first Lambda function that is over here that we have configured successfully, and we also have the Lambda layer. Lambda layer is something that we will require in the second Lambda function, which is responsible for processing the OCR response. Okay, so now as a next step, we are going to create another Lambda function. So click on functions, say create function, give the function name. I will say Textract response process. I will select runtime as Python 3.9, architecture as x86 64. Within permission we are going to use an existing role, and we are going to select the same role that we have created. Okay, that is Textract, that is lambda underscore textract underscore async, and say create function. Okay, now here we have successfully created the Lambda function. Now let's copy and paste the source code from our repository. So here I have another file that is Lambda async response process. Okay, so open that, and we are going to copy this code, and we are going to say paste it over here, save it, say deploy. And finally we will also need Lambda layer, because here we are using pandas to deal with the CSV. You can use any other package if you want, okay, but I have used pandas. So to attach the layer you need to scroll down to layers, okay, and say add a layer, and here select custom layers. From the custom layers select pandas underscore 3 underscore 9 underscore textract that we have created. Okay, so select version and say add. Now here we have successfully added the Lambda layers. Okay, now let me quickly take you through this code. So here we are using OS, JSON, Boto3 and pandas package. Okay, and on line number 18, okay, we need to set some environment variables. So this bucket name is going to be this one, that is textract-async-process, and this prefix is going to be the CSV. So this is the information about where we want to store or upload the CSV after processing the response. Okay, so let's quickly configure this environment variables. So here within configuration, we will say environment variables, and the very first environment variable is bucket name. I'm going to say copy, say edit, add environment variable, paste it over here, and the value is going to be the bucket name that we have created as a part of step 1. Okay, that is Textract async process. Paste it over here. The second environment variable is the prefix. Say copy, add environment variable, paste, we will say CSV. Okay, and save. Okay, so here we have successfully configured the environment variable. Now on line number 21, we are fetching the job ID. So from where we are fetching the job ID? From the notification or the event that we will receive from the SNS topic, which will contain all the information about the job ID. So that's where we will get the job ID from the event. And once we have the job ID, we are calling the process underscore response method with the parameter as job ID, and it will return the lines, right? So for example, the text of page 1, then page 2, page 3. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at the process response method. So here we have that method which accepts job ID. Then we have created the Boto3 client of the Textract service. Okay, and then on line number 47, we are calling a method that is get document text detection, which will accept the parameter as the job ID, and it will return some response. Okay, and once the response is returned, we are appending that response to the pages. And then so for example, sometimes the response is quite large or quite big, so that's where it will return the next page token. So if there is a next page token, then we have to loop through that response again. So we need to again call the get document text detection with the next token parameter to get the response of the next page or the next set of response. Okay, so that's why we are checking if there is a next token in the response, then we are setting next token as whatever the next token is within the response. And if we have next token, then again we are going to loop through that, right? And we are going to keep calling get document text detection until and unless the response does not have the next token. And once we keep getting the response, we are going to append the response in the pages. Okay, and finally on line number 65, we are looping through the pages and we are appending the text, right? Page lines, and finally we are returning page lines over here, that is on line number 23. Okay, now once we have the response, we are defining the CSV file name. So we are going to have job id.csv as the file name, and then we are defining the data frame using page underscore lines.items. So it's going to be a dictionary along with, I think, page number with the reference of whatever text it has, right? And then finally we have df.columns, where we are saying the first column is page number, the second column is the individual text. And then on line 28, we are storing that CSV file to the temporary storage, that is /tmp/ whatever the file name is. And finally on line number 30, we are uploading that file to the specified S3 bucket with whatever prefix that we have defined. And finally it returns status code 200, that is file uploaded successfully. So this is the overall flow and the high level overview of this Lambda function. Now as a next step, I think only one step is remaining, which is to set the trigger on this SNS topic. So we will go back to the SNS topic that we have created and scroll down to subscriptions, say create subscription. And here the protocol is going to be the Amazon Lambda function. And the endpoint is, you can search for that Lambda function name, that is Textract. Okay, I think we need to reload this. So the Lambda function name is Textract response process. It should be here. Create subscription. Okay, let me go back to the topic. That is Textract async notification. Say create subscription, protocol, Amazon Lambda. We'll say Textract. It is over here. Oops, it's not showing. Okay, let's copy the ARN of this lambda function and paste it over here. I'm not sure why it is not showing over here. And finally, we will say create subscription. I think, is it the permission? But I think it should trigger this lambda function. Let me quickly check it out. It's a topic. I will publish a sample message. We'll say test and say publish message. So I'll say view CloudWatch logs, and here we are. It is able to invoke the lambda function, so I think we are good. Okay, so here it threw an exception. Obviously it was expected. Okay, so I think we are good, and I believe we have implemented the end-to-end resources that we have defined over here, and we have also set the trigger that is required. So now as the next step, we are going to upload a file which is the multi-page PDF. So here I have this file that is culture_wikipedia.pdf. So I have randomly saved the culture Wikipedia page as the PDF. So here we have basically 11 pages, right? So what we expect is that the CSV should have 11 rows, right? And each row should refer to the individual text of this page along with the page number, right? So we also expect that it should be in sequence. Okay, so as I mentioned, we are going to upload this file to the S3 bucket. So I'm going to open this S3 bucket, and within async-doc-text directory, we are going to upload this file. So I will simply drag and drop over here, and then we will monitor whether all of the components are working fine or not, or if there are any issues. Okay, now I will say upload. Now if we look at the architecture diagram, so here we have uploaded the file. Now as a next step, this lambda function should get triggered. So we are going to check the logs of this lambda function, whether it is working fine or not. Okay, so let me quickly open that lambda function as well. Now here we have that lambda function that is Textract sync job creation. It should be async basically. And we will say monitor, say view logs in CloudWatch. Now here the file is uploaded successfully. Now this lambda function should get triggered. And as you can see, we have the logs over here. And here we have the bucket name and the file name that we are printing. And I think it has created the job successfully within Amazon Textract. Okay, now let's go back to the architecture diagram. Now once this will be completed, it's going to send the notification or a message to this SNS topic. So we are going to look at the logs of this lambda function, or we can also look at the Amazon S3 bucket, which is the Textract-output directory, whether it has stored the response or not. Okay, so we will have a look at it. So the next step is to open the lambda function. That is another one, that is Textract response process. And we will say monitor view logs in CloudWatch. So as you can see, the another log is created, and it says task timeout. Okay, we need to increase the timeout of this lambda function. So I think it has failed at this point of time. So let's click on configuration, say edit within general configuration, and here we will say 10 seconds. Okay, I think it should suffice. And then we will say save. Okay, let's also have a look at the S3 bucket. Let me close this, go back to Textract-output, and here we should be able to see the response that is being stored over here. Okay, so I think the pipeline is working fine, except for the part that the second lambda function got timeout. So let's try again. Let me re-upload the file, and it should trigger the pipeline. Say upload. Now the file is uploaded successfully. Let's have a look at the CloudWatch logs. Reload it. So here we have the second invocation, right? And the job has been created. Now we will have a look at this Lambda function invocation. So here we also have the third invocation and it has started. Let's wait. So as you can see here, we have also printed the response, right? So here we have the page number and the respective text within the row. Okay, and I think it ran successfully, and I think now we can go back to the S3 bucket and have a look into the CSV directory. So let's download the latest one, and let me open this. So here, as you can see, here we have the page number and the respective text, right? So we can verify it as well. So if we look at the first line, so it starts with the Wikipedia culture, and from here culture is an umbrella and it goes on, right? And then within second line we have that are transmitted through social learning and human, right? If we look at the third page, it starts with etymology, okay, and so on. So let's quickly have a look at the last page as well, that is page number 11. So here we see culture, for example, people who are raised in the culture, and it should end with, oops, I cannot scroll. Okay, maybe I think I need to open this file with some other editor so that we can have a look at the full text. Maybe what I can do is, let me see, I can open with Sublime. Okay, here we are. So if you can see, 11 of 1921, 8:56 p.m. If we look at the text at the very end, so here we have date and time and the last line over here, right? So here we have all the text line by line for the respective page along with the page number that is being stored as a CSV within S3 bucket. Okay, so basically this is how you can perform OCR on the multi-page PDF file and save it as CSV. Now, as I promised, I am going to share the CloudFormation template with you so that you can directly reuse that CloudFormation template to deploy these resources and you don't have to do it manually. Okay, so I have another repository that is AWS CloudFormation-template, and within that I have this file that is textract_async_lambda.yaml. Okay, so you can download this or clone this repository and reuse this CloudFormation template as per your requirement. Okay, so it basically accepts four parameters. So that is the code bucket name. So while using this CloudFormation template, you need to upload the zip file of the code of the respective Lambda function to one of the reference S3 bucket, and then you need to provide the reference of that zip file within this parameters. So I will quickly show you that as well. So I'm going to close all this and I will open CloudFormation. So we'll search for CloudFormation. Okay, so I already have that template file or the YAML file locally. Okay, so I'm going to say create stack. Now here I will say upload a template file. I'm going to choose a file, and here I have that file that is Textract async lambda. I will say open, and it will perform few checks, and then you can say next. Now as a next step, you need to enter the stack name. So I will say temp Textract async, something like this. And here we need to provide the parameters, that is code bucket name. So I will open S3 management console from here. So what does it mean by code bucket name? So here I have this bucket that is reference bucket code. Okay, so within this bucket I have all the code for the lambda function 1 as well as for the lambda function 2 and the zip file for the lambda layers. Okay, so within this bucket I have all that resources. So I will say this is my code bucket name. Then here I need to enter the S3 key reference for pandas layer. Okay, so that is going to be the async doc text, and this is my key reference. So what I will do is I'm going to copy async-doc text / pandas 39.zip. Okay, so here is my pandas zip file. Now I need to copy and paste the S3 key reference for the lambda code, that is for lambda function 1. So that's going to be lambda function, this one, lambda function async detect text. Okay, so copy. So you don't need to provide the full S3 URI because here we have already mentioned the bucket name. So here all you need to do is copy and paste the prefix and the zip file reference. Okay, same goes for lambda function 2. So here it is. So in case if you have a question that how did I created this zip file, so what I did was I have this code over here, right? So I created 3 zip file. So one zip file for this lambda function, another for this one, and this one we already have as .zip. Okay, so all you need to do is you just need to rename this function as lambda underscore function, I think. Okay, so just verify the lambda function file name. So it's going to be lambda function.py. So you need to save it as lambda function.py, and then you perform the zip operation upon it, right, and upload it to the S3 bucket, and then you can pass on the reference of that zip file and this parameters. And once you're done with this, say next again. I acknowledge, say create stack. So now it's going to take some time to create all the resources. So let's wait. So now as you can see, the stack creation is completed. Now we can click on resources and we can have a look at all the resources that is created. So the very first thing that we are going to do is open the S3 bucket. Okay, because within this bucket we will not have all those directory, so we need to create it manually as a first step. Okay, so I'm going to say create folder. I will say csv, say create folder again. I will say Textract -output. Okay, say create folder. And the third one, let me quickly check, async. Okay, the third one is going to be the async doc -text. Say create folder, paste it over here, say create folder, and we are done. Now we are good to upload a file to this directory. So let's upload it, drag and drop, say upload. Let's have a look at the other resources. So now it's going to trigger which lambda function, detect doc lambda, this lambda function, right? So let's have a look at the CloudWatch logs of this lambda function. So here we have the code as well, along with the environment variables configured for us. Yeah, and then click on monitor, say view logs in CloudWatch, and we should have logs there. So as you can see, it is triggered successfully. Now let's have a look at the another lambda function, that is the parse lambda, and click on monitor. If the job is completed, then this lambda function would also get triggered. And here we are. So we have this logs, and it ran successfully. As you can see, we have the text as well. Now we can go back to the S3 bucket, have a look at the CSV directory. Go back, CSV, and here we have the CSV as well. Let's download it. Let me open in Sublime. So here it is. We have all the 11 pages along with the text line by line. So at this point of time, I have stored all the text in the list, right, string of list, but you can play around with this and you can parse however you want. Okay, so basically this is how you can perform OCR or detect document text upon multi-page PDF using asynchronous invocation. And this is how you can store that information page-wise in the form of CSV using pandas as a lambda layer. And I had also shared the CloudFormation template, which you can reuse as per your requirement, as well as the lambda function code and the pandas lambda layer zip file, so you can reuse it as well. So guys, that's all for this section. In this section, I will take you through on how to extract text, key value pairs and tables from the PDF file, and how we can save the output as CSV. So here we will create separate CSV for text, key value pairs and tables. So basically this video is an extension of the previous video. So now let's take a step back and have a look at the architecture diagram that we have implemented in part 4 of this tutorial series. So as you can see on my screen, here we have the same architecture diagram that we have used in the previous video. So guys, basically in this video also we are going to use the same architecture diagram because the flow and the components are going to remain same except for the business logic in both the lambda functions. And also I want you to take note that in this video we will directly use the CloudFormation template to deploy these resources, because I have already covered the creation of the resources manually in the part 4 of this tutorial series. So I would recommend you to go through the part 4 video first if you have directly stumbled upon this video. So let's get started. So what I will do is I will quickly give you an overview about this flow so that you can get the high level idea that how it works. So guys, here we have the PDF file which we are going to upload into this S3 bucket, and once we upload the file, it's going to trigger an event, and that event will invoke the lambda function. Now this lambda function is responsible for creation of the Amazon Textract job, and now once the job is created, it's going to perform OCR or extraction of the key value pair or extraction of the tables from the PDF file. And once the job is completed, it's going to store the response into one of the S3 bucket that we will pass as a part of the job creation, right? So we are going to pass some configuration to the Amazon Textract, like a bucket name, or if there is any prefix that we want to set. Then we are also going to pass on the information about SNS topic configuration, so that once the Amazon Textract job is completed, it can send out a notification to the Amazon SNS topic. So similarly, once the job is completed, it's going to send out a notification or a message to the Amazon SNS topic. And once Amazon SNS receives that notification, it's going to trigger this lambda function. Now this lambda function is responsible for post-processing of the response that is being stored into this Amazon S3 bucket. Now once the response is post-processed, then it's going to store it as CSV file into this Amazon S3 bucket. Right now, to deal with the CSV file, we are going to use pandas, and pandas is basically a Python package which does not comes inbuilt into the lambda function runtime. So that's where we will also leverage the lambda layer functionality to work with the third-party library like pandas. So this is the overall flow that we are going to implement in this video using CloudFormation template. Which is over here. I have already pushed the template into this repository, which is AWS CloudFormation template. So this is the same CloudFormation template that we have prepared or used in the previous video, except for the description that I have changed. And one more thing that I have changed is this value, that is async kv-table. So this is basically the S3 trigger that we are setting on the lambda function, right? So earlier it was async doc text, I think. But since in this video we are dealing with the key value pair and the table, so I have just given the relevant name over here. So this is the overall template and this is how it looks like. So guys, in case if you are new to the CloudFormation and want to learn about AWS CloudFormation template, then I have the comprehensive tutorial series or the playlist, right? So you can find it on my YouTube channel, that is AWS CloudFormation tutorial. So I have around 18 videos, right, that covers about the AWS CloudFormation template and its components, right? So you can go through that. Now coming back to our CloudFormation template. So now here we are. Now as the next step, we are going to deploy this CloudFormation template. So let's navigate to AWS Cloud Management Console and go to the CloudFormation service. Now once you are there, click on Create Stack. Here we are going to upload a template file. So choose a file, and here I have this template locally stored. That is Textract async kv_table.yaml. I'm going to open it. Now click on next. Give the stack name. I will say Textract kv, something like this, table. Okay. Now as the next step, we need to enter some value for the parameters. Now here we have to configure 1, 2, 3, 4 parameters. Now it's asking for the code bucket name. So it says enter S3 bucket name where the code is uploaded. So basically we are fetching the code for the Lambda function from the Amazon S3 bucket. So that's where we need to enter the reference of that S3 bucket. Then as I mentioned in the architecture diagram, that we are also leveraging Lambda layer. Now to leverage Lambda layer, we need to also provide the zip file for the pandas layer. Then this is the S3 key for Lambda function 1. So that is something over here. So we need to enter that where the code is located for this Lambda function, and similarly for the Lambda function 2. So that's where I have this S3 bucket. Let me open S3 Management Console. And within the console, I have this bucket that is reference bucket code. And here I have this directory that is async kv-table. So I'm going to open this. And within this directory, I have 3 files, that is lambda create job.zip, then lambda process response.zip, and then we have the file for the pandas layer. So basically I have to provide the reference of these 3 files over there, so that when CloudFormation starts to create resources or deploy resources, it is able to pick this zip file for the respective Lambda function. So now coming back to the CloudFormation template, so the first thing that we have to enter is code bucket name. So the bucket name is reference bucket code, right? So I'm going to copy this and paste it over here. Then we have Lambda layer. So Lambda layer is basically within async kv-table, and I think the code is also in that directory. So I will just copy paste the prefix, and then I will say pandas_39.zip. 39 is basically the Python runtime 3.9, and then we need to enter the reference key for the Lambda function 1. So that is Lambda create job, because first Lambda function is responsible for creation of the Amazon Textract job, and another Lambda function, that is the second Lambda function, is responsible for processing the response of the Amazon Textract. Okay, so these are the 4 parameters that we have to configure in order to proceed. Now you might think that from where I got the zip file. So what you can do is you can navigate to AWS tutorial-code repository. So I will basically provide the link of this code in the video description. So here I have this zip file, that is pandas_39.zip. So basically I have uploaded this zip file for Lambda layers into this S3 bucket, and then we have 2 directory basically for the respective Lambda function 1 and the Lambda function 2. So it is kind of self-explanatory. So the first one is Lambda create job. So you have to go to this directory and create the zip file for this Lambda function and upload it to the reference bucket that you have. And then you need to navigate to another directory, that is Lambda process response. And then you have to create the zip file of this package, right, and upload it to the reference bucket code. And once it is uploaded, you can spin up the CloudFormation template and enter those information over here, and you can just click on next. Okay, now moving along, scroll down and say next. Here you need to acknowledge and say create stack. Now it will take a while to create the stack, so let's wait. So guys, now while the stack is being created and the resources are being deployed, let's have a look at the file that we are going to upload today and perform key value pair text and the table extraction. Right, so this is the file. So this is basically the dummy employment application, right? So where we have kind of some name, some location, name, date of birth. So this is the dummy values that I have filled in. So education, graduate, work experience, and here we have basically some other information, right? So here we are going to perform the key value pair extraction as well as the text extraction and the tables extraction. Right, so this is how the file looked like, and let me reload this over here, and it says rollback in progress. Oops, here we have some issue. So I know where the issue was, so let me delete this. So basically what happened is that while giving the name of the stack, right, so I have used the caps, the K and the T is in caps, and basically it says that a bucket name should not contain uppercase characters. So here what we are doing is, while creating the bucket, we are also leveraging the stack name, right? So that's where it has through an exception. So we need to redeploy it once again. So here now the stack is being deleted, right? So we will say create stack. Let me choose a file again, select a file, say next. So I will say Textract KV table, something like this. So make sure you don't use caps while using this template, because the template is using the stack name as well for the bucket name, right? And bucket name does not accept the capital letters. So that's where it threw an exception. So now let me reconfigure or re-enter the value for this parameters. So first one is reference bucket name, then we have lambda layer. So this is the prefix that we have, because all the file are in this directory. Now the lambda layers pandas 39_zip, then the lambda function 1 reference, that is lambda_create_job.zip. Finally, the second lambda function, that is lambda_process_response.zip. Say paste, say next. I will say next again, acknowledge, say create stack. Now let's wait for a while. So guys, now as you can see on my screen, the stack creation is completed. Now we can click on resources to have a look at the resources that this CloudFormation template has created. Now the very first thing that we are going to do is open the S3 bucket, and within that S3 bucket we are going to create a directory that is, let me see, that is async kv table, and within this directory we are going to upload a file, that is the PDF file, and say create folder. Now open this folder, and now we are going to upload the PDF file that I have showed you earlier. Now if everything is configured perfectly fine, then we will see a few more directories within this S3 bucket, and then we are going to have a look at those directories and the content of that directory. Now the file is being uploaded. Now the file is uploaded successfully. Now what will happen? So here it has already created the Textract-output directory. Now if we look at the architecture diagram, so here we have uploaded this file. Now it will trigger this lambda function, that is lambda function 1, which is responsible for creation of the job, right? So let's have a look at the logs. So maybe here is our CloudFormation template, and so here we have the job lambda, so we can open that and have a look at the CloudWatch logs. So here is our lambda function, see monitor, say view logs in CloudWatch. And here, as you can see, it has been triggered successfully. Now as the next step, it's going to trigger or create the Amazon Textract job over here. And within this directory, that is Textract-output, it's going to store the response that is over here, correct? Let me close this reference bucket. And then once it is done, it's going to send the SNS notification, and it's going to trigger another lambda function, which is basically responsible for post processing of the response that is being stored in the Textract-output directory. And once the response is processed, it's going to store the CSV file, respective CSV file for text, key value pairs and tables into this S3 bucket. So let's have a look at the S3 bucket directly. Let me reload this. So as you can see here, we have a couple of more directories. So the first is basically async kv table. So in this bucket, we will have, not this one. So in this bucket, we have basically uploaded the file, and then we have kv, that is for key value pair. So here we have the directory with the job ID name. So what will happen whenever you will create a new job ID, it's going to create a respective directory within the key value pair, table directory and the text directory. And within that directory, you would be able to find the CSV file or the processed response. So here we are looking at the key value pair. So let me download this and have a look. So here we have this file, and here we go. Right, so here we have the key value pairs, that is citizenship, America, position applying, account clerk, mobile number, name, telephone, home, email address, place of birth and whatnot. So all the key value pairs that has been identified or detected by the Amazon Textract is stored in the CSV file. Now let's have a look at the another directory, that is tables directory, correct? So let me open that. Here also we have the respective job ID. So open that, and here we have basically 3 files, because in this employment form we have 3 tables basically, right? So this is the first table, this is the second one, and this is the third one, right? So that's where we have 3 tables. So basically if you look at the naming convention, then we have table underscore some ID, that is the unique ID underscore page underscore 1, right? That means this table is being identified or detected on page 1. So this will basically help when you deal with the multi-page PDF file, right? So you want to understand that where this table has been detected. So is it on page 2? Is it on page 3? Right? So that's where you can have a look at the name of the file, and you would be able to understand that where this stand, right, from where this table has been extracted. So let's have a look at one of the tables. So let me download this and let's open it. So here we have one of the table that is for our education, right? So here we have label, school name, period and the degree, that is graduate ABC University 2002 2007 and the masters, right? So similarly you will have the details of this table in one of the CSV file, and you will have the details for this table in another CSV file, right? So that's where we have 3 CSV file in here. So that's table. Now let's have a look at the raw text that is being extracted. So here again we have the job ID, so open that, and here we have text.csv. So let's download it and let's open it. So here as you can see, here we have 2 fields, that is page number and the text. So this will basically also help while you're dealing with the multi-page PDF. So in case if we have another page in this PDF, then you will see the second row saying page underscore 2 and its respective text. So basically this will also work with the multi-page PDF, right? So right now we are looking at the demo of the single page PDF file, but if you go ahead and upload multi-page PDF, then also it's going to work with that, right? So don't worry about that. So guys, this is how it works, and this is how you would be able to see the output. Right now if I go ahead and upload another file, then it's going to create another directory in the respective folders, right, with the job ID name, and within that job ID you will find the respective files. Now let's quickly have a look at the code at the very high level. So let me go back to the CloudFormation template and open the job lambda function. So here we are, and this is our lambda function, and this is how it looks like. So here we have a couple of environment variable that I have taken you through in the previous video. So here we are accepting output bucket name, output S3 prefix, and the topic ARN, then the SNS topic role ARN. So this is the same code that we have used or reused in the previous tutorial, except for the part that we have changed line number 30. So earlier, since we only wanted to detect text, we were using start document text detection or start detect document text, something like that, right? But now at this point of time, we wanted to extract tables and the key value pairs. So that's where we have to use start document analysis method. And then we need to pass the reference of the PDF file that we have uploaded to the S3 bucket. So from where we will get that reference is that it's going to create a trigger, and within this variable or the event variable, we are going to get that information that within this bucket this file has been uploaded. So we need to perform the OCR on this file. So that's where you need to pass the document location reference. And then we have feature types. So here we need to explicitly tell Amazon Textract that what you want to extract, that is tables or forms. So you can pass single value if you only want to extract tables, or if you only want to extract forms. But for this demo purpose, I have included both, that is tables and forms. And then we have optional output configuration, that where we want to store the output after OCR or the text extraction, right? So that's where we have passed this reference, and this is something that is coming from the environment variable that we have configured. So we are saying that store the output in this bucket name, and if you want to add some prefix, say Esther prefix, and provide that prefix. So at this point of time, we have provided Textract -output as the prefix. So that's where the response has been stored in this, right? That is Textract -output. So in this directory, basically Amazon Textract will store that response, and then we are going to fetch that response in the another Lambda function. So we will have a look at it in a while. And then we have notification channel. Again, this is optional. So here we are saying that once the job is completed, send out a notification to this SNS topic ARN, right? To this SNS topic, right? So that's where we are passing that notification channel information. Now for Amazon Textract to send the notification to the SNS topic, it requires some sort of permission, right? Because by default, Amazon Textract does not have permission to send the notification or send the message to this SNS topic. So that's where we also need to create the IAM role, which provides permission to the Amazon Textract to send the message to the SNS topic. So that's where we have created the IAM role and provided the reference of that SNS role ARN as a part of the environment variable, right? So all this configuration has been created using the CloudFormation template. So you can go through that CloudFormation template and you will get an idea which all components we have. Basically, you will ultimately find these components only, right? But apart from this, there is some additional configuration that we have to do, right? Like we need to create the IAM role for the Lambda function, provide some sort of permission, right? So for example, while we create this Lambda function, we also need to provide permission to create the job within Amazon Textract, right? So that's where we need to add certain permission. So you can have a look at the CloudFormation template as well. So here on line 37, it's all I think we have changed in this code, and I think rest of the things are as it is. Okay, so this is basically our Lambda function 1. Let's have a look at the Lambda function 2. So Lambda function 2 is basically the parse Lambda. Let me open that. Now here in this Lambda function, we have made a lot of changes. So the Lambda function or Lambda underscore function.py looks very simple like this, right? So here what we are doing is we are just fetching the bucket name where we want to store the processed response, for example, CSV of the key value pair or the CSV of the table. So that's where we are asking for the bucket name, and that is something we have configured as a part of the environment variable, correct? And then on line number 19, we are fetching the job ID from the SNS event, right? So here if we look at the architecture diagram, then once the job is completed, it's going to send the notification to the Amazon SNS, and then SNS topic will trigger this Lambda function with some sort of information, right? So that's where we will get the information about job ID in the event variable, right? So here we will have the job ID. And then finally on line number 22, we are calling one method which is coming from helper.helper, right? That is process underscore response. So this is the method that we are calling, and as a parameter, we are passing the bucket name where we want to store the response or the CSV file. Then we are passing the job ID, because to fetch the response from Textract-output directory or from Amazon Textract, we will require this job ID. And then finally, we have 3 parameters, that is get table, get key value pair, and get text. So for example, you only want to perform table and the key value pair extraction, and you don't want to perform the text extraction, right? So you can set this to false. Similarly for get underscore table and get underscore key value pair, so you can configure this from. So this is basically process underscore response. So now let's have a look at the helper.py file. So here I have this directory that is helper, and within that we have two files, that is parser.py and helper.py. So let's have a look at the helper.py. So here basically we have the helper function like upload to S3. So this is the helper function to upload a file to the S3 bucket, that is CSV files. Then helper function for extraction of the key value pair. Then helper function for saving of the key value pair as CSV, right? Then extraction of key value pair text, and saving the table CSV, then saving the text CSV, right? So here we have a couple of helper function. And then finally in the lambda function.py we are calling this process underscore response method. So here what we are doing is on 66 we are defining the Boto3 client for Textract, and then on line 71 we are calling get document analysis. Right now, to get the information about the response or to get the actual response, we need to use get document analysis along with the job ID as the parameter, right? So that's where it's going to give us the JSON file of the extracted information for the particular PDF, right? So that's where we need to use get document analysis. And once we have that information, we start to append that response into pages. Now in case if it has the paginated response, then we will look for the next token, right? If the response contains a next token, then we will perform a loop, that is the while loop, and we will keep looping until and unless we don't find the next token in the response. And while we perform this loop, we keep appending the response into this pages list. So that's where we are performing this operation. And then finally we are looping through the pages that we have as a part of the response, correct? Now on line 89 we have this class that is parse. So this is coming from .parser import parse. So basically this is coming from parser.py. And then from that parse class we are calling process underscore response method, correct? Now as a part of the parse parameters, we are passing the page, then we are passing the three parameters, right? Which operation we want to perform. Do we want to extract table? Then it's true. Do we want to extract key value pair? Then it's true, right? So basically you can set these parameters as per your requirement, right? And finally we are calling this parse.process response, which will basically return the table information, key value pair information, and the raw text information. And then we will check for whether the user wants to extract the table or not. If he wants to extract, then we are calling this save table as CSV, which will accept three parameters, that is table that is being written from the parser.py, and the job ID and the bucket name, right? Similarly it goes for key value pair. So for key value pair we are saving it as CSV over here on line 105. Similarly for raw text, that is on line number 107. Okay, so this is basically very high level overview of helper.py. I might not have covered all the lines one by one, but I think it's kind of self-explanatory. So I had simply covered the major part that has been changed. Okay, now let's quickly have a look at the parser.py. So this is the class that I have written in order to post process the response from the Amazon Textract to basically extract the relevant information like table, key value pair, and the raw text. And within helper.py we were calling this process underscore response, and here we are calling the respective methods to perform table, key value pair, and the text extraction. And then finally we are returning table information, key value pair information, and the text information. So right now I had not commented this code, so I'm going to comment each of the functions so that you would be able to have a clear idea about what each function is doing, right? So keep an eye on the commits of this AWS tutorial code repository if you want to have a look at the code and the comments. So this is our basically lambda function too. And again, I wanted to take note that this will also work with multi-page PDF files. So guys, basically this is how you can perform table extraction, key value pair extraction, and the text extraction using Amazon Textract with full flow, right? And I have also provided the AWS CloudFormation template, which you can reuse as per your requirement. So guys, that's all for this section. In this section, we are going to cover one of the use case where we want to upload a file, and as a part of the response, we want a backend to identify or detect key value pairs and the table information, and then draw the bounding box around that to highlight that information. So at the very high level, we want to upload something like what you see on the left side of my screen, and as a part of the response, we want to receive something like what you see on the right side of the screen. Okay, so here what you see in red and green are basically key value pairs, and what you see in blue color represents the table information, and what you see in the yellow bounding box are basically the cells in the table, which is highlighted by the blue color. Okay, so this is something that we want to achieve as a part of this video. So let's see how we can achieve this. So now to get started, as a next step, I will quickly take you through this workflow. That is something we are going to implement in this video. So here the user is going to upload a file, right? And as soon as user clicks on the submit button, this front end or whatever your front end functionality is, it's going to invoke the API endpoint, which is slash upload, and it will also pass the file name as a part of the query string parameter. And this functionality will return the pre-signed URL to upload a file back to the front end, and as soon as this front end receives the pre-signed URL to upload a file, it's going to upload, for example, x.png using pre-signed URL to this S3 bucket or through the storage. Okay, now once the file is uploaded to the storage, it's going to trigger some sort of business logic, and once that business logic is applied to that file and the file is processed, right, it's going to store that processed file back to the storage. And while this workflow is in progress or is in process, this front end is again going to call the API endpoint, which is slash download, and it will again pass the query string parameter, that is the file name, that is x.png in this case. And once this front end invokes this API endpoint, this backend logic is going to check if x.png is processed or not. If it is processed, then it's going to return the pre-signed URL to download that processed file to the front end. And once front end receives the pre-signed URL to download that file, it's going to download that file and display it something like this. Okay, so basically this is the overall flow that we are going to implement in this video. Okay, now let's have a look at the architecture diagram. So this is how the architecture diagram looks like. Again, we have a user and the sample user interface. User is going to upload a file, and this sample UI or the front end is going to call this Amazon API gateway. And as you can see, it will request pre-signed URL to upload a file, and this lambda function, which is basically the pre-signed URL generator, will return the pre-signed URL back to the sample UI. And once it receives the pre-signed URL to upload a file, it's going to upload a file to this S3 bucket using that pre-signed URL. Okay, and as soon as the file is uploaded to this Amazon S3 bucket, it's going to trigger another lambda function, which is basically responsible for applying OCR or to extract key value pairs and the table information from that image. And once that information is extracted using Amazon Textract, it's going to apply the bounding box around that information. Okay, and once that processing is done, it's going to store that processed image back to the Amazon S3. Okay, in the meantime, this sample UI or the front end is going to invoke this API gateway again, that is the different API endpoint, and it's going to request processed image or the processed file from this API endpoint, right? And this lambda function is going to check whether the uploaded file is processed or not within the S3 bucket. And if it finds out that the file is processed, then it's going to return the processed image pre-signed URL to download, okay, back to the sample UI or the front end. And once this front end receives the pre-signed URL to download that file, it's going to download that processed file, and it's going to display it something like this. So now as a next step, we want to deploy these resources which are the part of this architecture diagram. Now to deploy this, I have already written the AWS CloudFormation template, as you can see on my screen. You can directly navigate to AWS CloudFormation template repository and look for Textract bounding box API.yaml file, and you should be able to find this CloudFormation template. So this template is nothing but the configuration about all these resources that you can see on my screen, right, that we want to deploy. So it's all in here. And this CloudFormation template will accept few parameters like code bucket name, then the Lambda function code, right? So here we have basically 1, 2 and 3 Lambda function. So we need to provide the reference of the code for those Lambda function. And apart from that, we are also using Lambda layer. So basically, to draw the bounding box around each of the information or each of the key value pair and the table information, we are using OpenCV package. Okay, now OpenCV does not comes inbuilt into the Lambda runtime, so that's the reason we also need to provide the reference for the OpenCV package, right? That is the zip file. So we can create the Lambda layers and we can add that Lambda layer into the Lambda function and use OpenCV package there. Okay. Now, in case if you want to learn more about the CloudFormation template, then I have did a dedicated AWS CloudFormation tutorial series. So you can just navigate to my channel and click on playlist and just look for CloudFormation, right? So you should be able to find that in terms of CloudFormation template. Okay, and if you want to learn more about the Lambda layers, that how you can deploy or use OpenCV package into the Lambda function, then also I have did a separate tutorial on that as well, so you can refer that if you want. I can post the links of those videos in the video description. And apart from that, the additional functionality that we have is that the upload and download of the file using pre-signed URL. So again, I have covered both the functionality in the API Gateway tutorial series. Again, if you want, I can post the links of that videos in the video description, or you can simply go to my channel and click on playlist and look for Amazon API Gateway tutorial series, and you should be able to find these two videos, right? That how you can upload a file using pre-signed URL and how you can download a file using pre-signed URL as well. Okay, so I think most of the things we have already covered, and apart from that, we are using this Lambda function to invoke Amazon Textract, which is basically the analyzed document. So again, that functionality we have already covered in one of the previous video, so you can refer that as well. Okay, so at the high level, this is nothing but the combination of all those videos we are just putting together into one CloudFormation template to achieve or implement one of the use case. Okay, so that is it. And then let's talk about the code part. So the code I have pushed to this repository, that is AWS tutorial code, and you can navigate to Textract directory. Within that, you would be able to see bounding box, key value tables. And here I have pushed the code for Flask application as well, that I have used as a part of the front end. Okay, and then here we have code for 3 Lambda function and then the OpenCV Lambda layer. So here I have the zip file, so you can directly use that. And now let's have a look at the pre-signed upload and download code. So here we have pre-signed -upload. This is the lambda function.py, right? So this is the very simple function that we have written. This basically generates the pre-signed URL to upload a file to specific bucket for the given prefix, and then it will return the create pre-signed URL or the pre-signed URL back to the Amazon API gateway and back to the front end. Okay. And similarly, we have the pre-signed download part, the another Lambda function. So here again, it's simply creating the pre-signed URL to download a file if that file exists. Okay, so here we have covered one more thing, is that check if that particular file exists. Okay, so here we are checking if the processed file exists into the S3 bucket or not. And if the file exists, then only we are going to create the pre-signed URL for that, else we are going to return 404 file is being processed. Okay, so that front end is going to reinvoke that API endpoint and maybe 2 or 3 seconds again. Okay, so this is the pre-signed download part. And finally, we have one more, that is image processing. So here we have basically covered the invocation of the Textract method, that is analyzed document, which basically returns the key value pairs and the table information. Okay, and if you remember, then in I think part 2 or part 3 of this tutorial series, I have taken you through the typical response, right? That how the response looks like and which items or which parameters that response contain. And if you remember, then I had also covered the bounding box and the geometry information, right? So that information we have used to basically draw the bounding box around that image to identify or highlight the key value pairs and the table information. And here, apart from that, I have this helper.py file where I have written the helper functions. Let's quickly have a look at it. So here within helper folder, we have helper.py, So this is the typical error processing function. This is the upload to S3 function, and then we have the function for drawing bounding box. Okay, so this is again the helper function to get width and the height, okay, of the image. And then this is the function that we are calling into the lambda function dot py, and it it basically accepts three parameters, that is response that we are receiving from the Amazon Textract, then the S3, then the bucket name and the file name. So this S3 is basically the Boto3 object. Okay, and finally we are looping through that response, okay, to extract the key value pairs, right, and the information for geometry and the bounding box of that particular block. And then we are also extracting the information for the table, block type table, right, and then again we are extracting that geometry and the bounding box information. Okay, and in turn it's going to call the draw bounding box method to basically draw that bounding box around key value pairs and the table information. Okay, and similarly for cells which are basically highlighted in the yellow color. So this is basically very high level of what the code looks like. Now, in order to use this code, what you need to do is you need to navigate to each of this directory, that is, for example, image processing. You need to select both this item and you need to compress it and give it some name. Okay. Similarly, for pre-signed download and the pre-signed upload, and this OpenCV is already in the compressed form, right? So you don't need to do anything over here. And once you prepare the zip file of all these directories, okay, you need to upload those zip files in one of the S3 buckets, as I have did here, as you can see on my screen. So here I have this reference bucket code and I have created a directory that is bounding box, and within that directory I have uploaded this zip file. So this is for image processing lambda function, this is for pre-signed download function, this is for pre-signed upload function. Okay, so you need to prepare the zip file, because we are going to provide the reference of this code or the zip file while we start deploying the AWS CloudFormation template. Okay, now once this part is done, we will go back to the CloudFormation service. So navigate to AWS Management Console and look for CloudFormation and say create stack. Now here we are going to upload a template file because I have that file locally. So I'm going to say choose a file, and from here I'm going to select this template. I will say open, and once the template is uploaded, click on next, and here you need to provide the stack name. I will say bounding box, something like this. Okay, and then now we need to enter the parameters. So basically the first parameter is the code bucket name, so it's asking where is your lambda function code located. Okay, so my code is located into this reference bucket code, so I'm going to copy the name of the bucket and paste it over there. And then we have lambda layer, so it says enter S3 key reference for OpenCV layer, so we need to provide the reference for the OpenCV -39.zip package. Okay, so our OpenCV package is located in this directory within S3 bucket, and then we will say OpenCV -39.zip. Okay, similarly all the code reference is located in this directory, so I will simply copy and paste it over here. And then it's asking for the S3 key image process lambda, so key reference for image processing lambda, so it's going to be the image-processing.zip in my case. And then it's asking for the pre-signed download lambda, so it's over here, copy, paste, and finally the reference for the upload lambda, so I will say copy and paste it over here, and then we will say next. Scroll down, click on next, scroll down, say I acknowledge, and say create stack. Now it will take some time to create all the resources, so let's wait. So now as you can see on my screen, the resources are deployed successfully and the CloudFormation template is created successfully. Now if we look at the resources, then we should be able to find all the resources that this CloudFormation template has created. Okay, and apart from that, if we look in outputs, then we will have the API endpoint, and we are going to use this API endpoint to invoke different functionalities. Now apart from this, one thing I want to highlight is that we have basically used IAM authorization for this API endpoint. So let's quickly have a look at it as well. So here we have HTTP API, So let me sort by create date. So as you can see, this is the sample API that is created by the CloudFormation template. And if we look at the authorization, so here as you can see, both the resources are basically IAM authorization enabled. Okay, so in order to invoke this API endpoint successfully, we need to sign the request with Amazon access key and the secret key. Okay, so we will need those keys in order to successfully invoke this API endpoint. That is basically signature version 4 if I'm not wrong. Okay, so this is it. Now we can copy this invocation URL, and if you remember, then I had mentioned that I have used Flask application in order to invoke this API endpoint and display the images, right? So as a part of the front-end application, so here under bounding box KV tables, I have this directory that is flask-app, and under that directory I have all the configuration and the code in order to run this application successfully. Okay, and then here I have this application.py file, and here I have a couple of methods defined. For example, the sign method. So as I mentioned, we need to sign this request in order to invoke it successfully, else it will return 403 forbidden if we don't sign this request. Okay, and then we have the helper function to call the /download API endpoint, right? And then we should be able to download the processed file. And then we have one more function, that is the index function, which is the main function. So what will happen if you look at the home.html under templates? So here I have this upload functionality. Okay, and once the file is uploaded and as soon as the user clicks on the submit button, it will invoke this index function right over here, that is on line number 17. So how it will invoke that function? So here within action we have defined that a call index function as soon as the submit button is being clicked. Okay, now once this function is invoked, it's going to create the temporary directory, that is static/temp directory, and then it will fetch the payload of the uploaded file and it's going to read that. And then I had also mentioned earlier that the front end will generate the unique file name, so we are using UUID to generate that, and then it's going to invoke the API endpoint right along with the file name that we have generated using UUID. And then on line 29 we are calling that API endpoint, and then it will return some response which would be a pre-signed URL if everything is configured perfectly fine. Okay, and then we will be using that pre-signed URL to upload that file, okay, that user has uploaded from the front end. Okay, and once the file is uploaded, it's going to call the download processed file method. Okay, so here we have the while loop and it's going to call this /download API endpoint, and this will check if the file is processed or not, and if the file is processed, okay, it's going to basically return the response.content. And as you can see on line 65, while we are invoking the get method, we are also calling the sign method. Okay, so basically we are signing this request. And then once the file is downloaded, it's going to display that file as a part of the front end, as we just saw in the initial part of the video. So this is the very high level and the rough flow that I have implemented using app.py. I will not go in much detail because this is not the Flask application tutorial. So maybe in your case you might be using the React.js or the AngularJS or anything else, right? But as of now I am using this Flask application. Okay, now before we move on, we need to configure a few things. So here I have this config.py where you need to set the environment variable for your access key ID and the secret key ID. And then finally, you need to also set the host and the endpoint. So let me set the host and the endpoint. So I will go back here, I will copy this. And then as a part of the endpoint, I'm going to say, this is my endpoint. And then host is going to be the same except for the stage name and the HTTPS. So remove this. Okay, so you can also set this as a part of the environment variable, and then you also require access key and the secret key in order to run this successfully. Okay, so I have that access key and the secret key as a part of the environment variable. Okay, so now I can execute unicorn free app colon app. Okay, and I will say enter. Oops, it should be unicorn. Okay, so here we are. I can simply copy this URL and go back to the browser, open a new tab and paste it over here, and I will say enter. Now as you can see here, we are going to click on choose a file, and then I'm going to say upload this sales invoice underscore lg.png. I will say open. So here you would be able to see the preview, and I will say submit, and it will take a while to display the information on the right side. So let's wait. So as you can see here, we have all the information, that is key value pair and the table information, that is being displayed as a part of this response. Okay, let's try with one more file. Let me click on choose a file. So here I will upload the sample receipt.png, this one. I will say open, and I will say submit. So as you can see here, we have the information along with the bounding box, right? So here we have key value pair highlighted in red and green, and the table information is highlighted in the blue color, and the cell information above that table is highlighted in the yellow color. Okay, so this is how it looks like. So guys, this is how you can implement this use case if you want to have the bounding box, if you want to highlight certain information using OpenCV and the Amazon Textract for some receipt or some forms, right? Then you can use this. Okay, I have posted the code in this repository, so you can reuse that as well. And same for the CloudFormation template. I hope you found this video helpful. So guys, that's all for this section. In this section, I'm going to cover how to integrate A2I or human loop within Textract flow. So let's say we have a workflow around detecting key value pairs using Amazon Textract, and now we want to send the detected key value pairs with a certain confidence score for human review. So in that case, we can integrate A2I as a part of the overall Textract flow. Okay. So here we will start with the creation of the Lambda function, followed by the assigning or attaching the necessary permission, and then we are going to update the code, followed by the addition of the S3 trigger. Okay, so let's get started and navigate to Lambda Management Console. Now once you are within Lambda Management Console, click on Create Function from the top right corner. Give the function name, I will say Textract A2I integration, something like this. And then I'm going to select runtime as Python 3.9. Within permission, I will say create a role or create a new role with basic Lambda permission, and then we will add the permission as and when required, and then click on create function. Now here we have successfully created the Lambda function. So as a next step, click on configuration, click on permissions from the left panel, and click on this role name. So here we are going to attach few permissions that this Lambda function would require in order to invoke Textract APIs, and it will also require the additional permission to basically invoke the human loop review workflow. Okay, so once you are there, click on attach policies. Here search for AWS Lambda execute. Now this managed policy will provide access to the S3 bucket and the CloudWatch logs, followed by search for Textract. And here we will check Amazon Textract full access. So you can always create the custom policy to narrow down the permission, but for the purpose of this video, we will select Amazon Textract full access, followed by search for human loop full access. And here you need to check this, that is Amazon augmented AI human loop full access. This permission we will need in order to invoke the human review workflow successfully. Okay, so check this and then click on attach policy. Now here we have successfully added the necessary permission for the Lambda function. So now let's close this. Now as the next step, click on code, and here we are going to update this code. And I have already pushed the required code to the GitHub repo, and I will paste the link of this in the video description. Okay, so I'm going to copy this code and go back to Lambda function, and then I will paste it over here. Okay, and then I will say deploy. Now here I will quickly take you through this code at the very high level. So here we are using a couple of packages like JSON, UUID, URL-lib, and Boto3, followed by OS for the environment variables. Okay, and then on line number 17 we are defining the Boto3 client of the Textract service, followed by flow ARN, which we will fetch from the environment variable, right? So at this point of time we have not set any sort of environment variable, but that is something that we are going to set at later point of time. Okay. And then on line number 19, we are checking for event. If there is any data in the event, then we are fetching the bucket name and the file name, Followed by on line number 24, we are calling the analyze document API or the method from the Textract service. And then from line 25 to 28, we are passing the file reference, right, from which we want to extract the information. Followed by on line number 31, we are passing feature types as forms because we want to extract the key value pairs from the past document. And then additionally on line number 32, we are having human loop config, right? That means human loop configuration. So we have to configure this in order to have A to I or human review workflow in place. Okay, so here on line 32, we say human loop config, where we need to pass a couple of parameters which says human loop name. So human loop name is something that we can set dynamically. So that's the reason here we are using UUID4 to dynamically generate a string, followed by the flow definition ARN, and this is something that we are going to fetch from the environment variable. So we are basically yet to create the flow definition. So that's the reason we will set it at later point of time. Followed by on line number 35, we are configuring or passing the data attributes, so where we are saying that whichever image or the document that we are uploading is free from personally identifiable information, and it's also free from the adult content. Okay, finally on line 43, we are simply printing the response, and then we have the return statements. So this is basically the very high level overview of the code that we are going to use in this video. Okay, so once you are done with that, click on deploy. Now as the next step, we are going to configure the S3 bucket trigger. So in this video, I'm going to use this bucket, that is textract-video-tutorial. Okay, so I'm going to click on add trigger and then search for S3. Select that and select the particular bucket on which you want to set the trigger. So I will search for Textract video tutorial, and then event type would be all object create events, and prefix I would say A2I hyphen trigger. Okay, so we will create a directory with this name in the particular bucket, and then suffix I would say .png. So here we are saying that trigger this lambda function when any PNG file gets uploaded into the A2I-trigger folder within textract-video-tutorial bucket. Okay, and then we will say I acknowledge and then click on add. Now here we have successfully configured the S3 bucket trigger over this lambda function. Now as a next step, we will go back to our S3 bucket and then we are going to click on create folder, and then we will say A2I-trigger. So whenever any file will get uploaded into this folder, the lambda function will get invoked. So click on create folder. Now apart from this, we need to take care of one more configuration. So for that, click on permissions and then scroll down to the CORS configuration. Okay, so you need to make sure that you have this configuration in place. So why do we need the CORS configuration at this point of time? It's because while we will create the human review workflow, basically that workflow is going to fetch the particular image or the document from this S3 bucket, right? And it's going to use the get method to fetch that document. So that's the reason we need to allow basically a cross origin resource sharing. Okay, and that's why we have this configuration in place. So here it only requires the get method. So within allowed methods we have mentioned get, and then within allowed origins I have used the wildcard. It means that any origin can access the particular document from this bucket with necessary permission, but you can restrict this allowed origin to specific domain that you want. Okay, but at this point of time we will move on with this configuration. Okay, now once we are done with this configuration, I think we are all set in terms of S3 bucket and trigger and the lambda function as well as with the permission part. So now as the next step, we will move on to the configuration of the human review workflow. But before we go ahead and configure that thing, let's understand this thing, right? So basically to integrate human review in the flow, we will need someone who can work on the reviewing portal and do the validation job, right? So basically to achieve that, we will create a private team of workers, and those workers would be responsible for validating the document or for the reviewing process. Okay, and then we will create the workflow around the human review, which will get triggered based on the certain conditions that we will set, because we don't want to invoke or call the human review workflow for all the invocations, right? So we are going to set some condition, right, and that condition will trigger the human review workflow. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create a team of workers. Now to create a team of workers, we need to navigate to Amazon SageMaker. So search for SageMaker and click on that. Now once we are within Amazon SageMaker, click on ground truth from the left panel and then click on labeling workforces. Now here within labeling workforces, basically we get three options, that is Amazon Mechanical Turk, right, to accomplish our task. And then we can create the private workforce, or we can basically identify the potential vendor who can perform the validation or review or the labeling service for us. Okay, but in this case we will move on with the private workforce. Okay, so now to create the private workforce, click on create private team, and then it will ask for some information. So here within first tab within private team creation, it gives us two options, that you can create a private team with AWS Cognito, or you can also create a private team with OpenID Connect. Okay, in this case we will move on with the AWS Cognito part, and then within team details you need to enter the team name. It can be anything. So I will say private workforce. Okay, and then once you define the team name, we are going to add the workers, right? So who is going to work on the review or the validation job? Okay, so we need to enter the email address of those workers. Okay, so here in this case I am going to enter my email address. So I will say chirag83@gmail.com. So here you can also enter multiple email address separated by comma. So if you want to add another email address, then you can say comma and let's say xyz@gmail.com, something like that. Okay, so this is how you can add multiple email address, or additionally you can also import the workers from the existing Amazon Cognito user group if you have one. Okay, but in this case we will move on with the invite new workers by email, and then you need to specify the organization name. So I will simply say SRCECDE, and then you need to provide the contact email. So I will simply enter my email address, that is chiragar83@gmail.com. And finally you should be able to preview the invitation, that how this invitation would look like to the specific workers. Okay, so this is how it looks like. So it basically provides the link to basically log in with the username and the temporary password. Okay, so this is how it looks like. So let's close this and click on create private team. So as you can see on my screen, we have successfully created the private team called as private workforce, okay, along with the Amazon Cognito user pool. And here you would be able to see the labeling portal sign in URL as well. Okay, and then here under workers, we would be able to see the list of workers that are going to work on this specific project. Okay, so at this point of time, I have added only one worker, but you can click on invite new workers from here to additionally add other workers. Now, if you look at the status, then it says invitation sent, right? So once the worker will click on that link and log in into that portal, this status will change to verified or confirmed. Okay, so I will show you how that email look like, and then we are going to log in into that portal at later point of time. Now, since we have created the private workforce, we are going to create the human review workflow. So now to create the human review workflow, click on augmented AI from the left panel and then click on human review workflows. Now, once you are within human review workflows, click on create human review workflow. And then here you need to provide some settings regarding the workflow. Okay, so I will say workflow, or maybe I will say Textract workflow. And then you need to provide the S3 bucket URI where you want to store the output of the human review. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to enter S3 Textract video tutorial A to I human output. Okay, so I'm going to use the same S3 bucket, and then I'm defining a folder where I want to store the human review output. So whenever this human review workflow will get triggered, the worker is going to update or provide the feedback for the particular document. And once the worker submit that particular changes, that changes are going to get stored into this A to I human output. So that's the reason we have to provide the reference of the S3 bucket. And then in order to access that S3 bucket, it requires some sort of permission. So that's the reason we have IAM role in place. So here, if you have existing role, then you can select that, or you can click on create new role. So here you can select specific S3 bucket, or you can select any S3 bucket. Okay, so we will move on with the any S3 bucket for now, and then I will say create. And here it is creating the IAM role, and as you can see, the role is created successfully. And then once this is done, move on to the task type. So here basically we have three task type. So the first one is the extract key value by extraction, and that is something we are interested in. And then we have recognition and the custom. So we are going to select extract key value by extraction, and then we will scroll down to Amazon Textract form extraction conditions. right? So here basically we are going to define the conditions that will invoke the human review workflow. So here we get three options and we can move on with all the three options. Okay, so first one is basically trigger a human review workflow for specific form keys based on the form key confidence score or when specific form keys are missing. So here you can explicitly look for particular key name. For example, you want to look for address. Okay, so this is how you can basically look for the specific key name, and then you can add multiple keys over here by clicking on this button. Or you can also look for specific key name that falls under certain identification confidence threshold or the qualification confidence threshold. Okay, so at this point of time we are not going to use this, so I'm going to uncheck this, but we will move on with the second one, that is trigger human review for all form keys identified by Amazon Textract with confidence score in a specified range. So here I will simply say trigger this human review workflow between 50 to let's say 95, and same for qualification confidence, I will say 50 to 95. And then apart from these two, you can also randomly send a sample of forms to humans for review, but at this point of time we will check the second one. And then we will move on to the worker task template creation. So basically worker task template creation is a template that workers are going to see on their screen. So basically you can use the default template, right? So you can create it from the default template, or you can also use your own template. Okay, but at this point of time we will select create from a default template, and then you need to provide the template name. So I will simply say default template 1, something like this, and then here you should be able to design the template. Okay, so you can enter the task description saying please review the key value pairs, and then you can also modify this instruction, right? This is how it looks like. So you can enter anything over here and it will reflect on the workers portal. And apart from that, you have additional instructions, so you can add it over here if you have any. And then we will move on to the workers. Now here we have three worker types, but since we already discussed that, we will move on with the private worker. So I'm going to select private over here, and from the drop down under private teams we will select the private workforce that we have just created. And then once this configuration is done, click on create. Now here, as you can see on my screen, we have successfully created the human review workflow. Okay, now if you remember, then we are yet to set the environment variable for the flow ARN. Okay, that is nothing but the flow definition ARN. So basically the value of flow ARN would be the ARN of this workflow. Okay, so let me copy this flow ARN and click on configuration, click on environment variable, say edit, add environment variable. Within key we will say flow ARN, and then within value we are going to copy this workflow ARN and paste it over here, and then we will say save. So now here we have successfully configured the environment variable as well. Now let's go back to the augmented AI and click on labeling workforces, and then click on private, and then we will scroll down to the workers, and as you can see the status is invitation sent. So let me show you how that email looks like. So as you can see on my screen, this is the email that I have received. So it says you are invited by particular email address from particular organization to work on a labeling project, and then here we have the link to log in into this labeling portal. So we can click on this link, and below that we will have the username and the temporary password that we can use to log in into that portal. So let me copy this temporary password, and here within username it's my email address, and then password is the temporary password. So I will say sign in, and then it will prompt us to set a new password. So I'm going to set a new password over here, and then I will say send. So as you can see, now we are into the labeling portal or the validation portal or whatever you want to call it, right? And at this point of time the job is 0 because we don't have any task to work on. Okay, so now I think we are all set to trigger this lambda function and perform the key value bar extraction, and then let's see how it will trigger the human review workflow. So let's go to our S3 bucket and open a2i-trigger, and let's drop a file into this bucket to trigger this lambda function. And here I'm going to drop this file. I don't see any problem with this file in terms of key value per extraction, but we will assume that there is some problem, and then we are going to modify some value in the labeling portal. So let me click on upload. Now here the file is uploaded successfully. Let's click on the lambda function and say monitor, say view logs in CloudWatch. and here we have the log. Let's click on that, and it says task time out. Okay, so we need to increase the timeout from 3 second to 10 second at least. So let's go back to our lambda function, click on configuration, and then click on general configuration, say edit, and then we will increase the timeout to 10 seconds, and then we will say save. And now we will re-upload that file again to trigger this lambda function. So let me drag and drop and say upload. Now here again we have uploaded the file successfully. So let's click on CloudWatch logs and look for another log. So here it is. So as you can see, it ran successfully, and here is the response that we have received from the Textract. So now if you remember, then we have set some condition, right? We have set some range about confidence score between 50 to 95. So if any of the key value pair falls under that range, then it's going to invoke or trigger the human review workflow. So let's go back to our portal and have a look. Let me reload this. And as you can see here, we have a job, right? So we have one job to perform, so we can select that, and then we need to click on start working. And then if you want to decline this task or release this task, right, so you can use this functionality from the top right corner. You also have the stop and resume later functionality. Okay, so I think it's showing us all the key value pairs, because I think all the key value pairs are detected with the score of 90 or 95, right? It's above basically 90%. So that's the reason most of the key value pairs we are seeing here. Okay, so as soon as you click on this particular block, it will highlight the key value pair in the left panel. So I think everything looks good to me. So in that case, what we will do is, let's say the total here, let's say it's not 105 and it's, let's say, 205. Okay, so we are just assuming that it misclassified or it detected the wrong value. So we will say it's 205 and not 105. Okay, and I think we will leave rest of the key value pair as it is. So wherever there is a blank value, you need to explicitly check this, right, that value is blank. If you don't check this and click on submit, it's going to throw an exception saying please fill each value or select value is blank. Okay, so we are going to check value is blank. Now we can click on submit. So I will say submit. So now as you can see, the job has been disappeared from here. So now we can go back to our S3 bucket and let's look for the directory, right? That is AI human output. Okay, so this is the S3 bucket URI that we have provided while configuring the human review workflow. Okay, so we are going to open this, and then we should be able to find the JSON file. So let's have a look. So here it is, right? That is output.json. So we will download this file and open it. So let me open it in Sublime. And I'm going to copy this and go to browser, and then we will open the JSON formatter, and then I will paste it over here, and then we will say format and beautify. So here, as you can see on my screen, this is the response and this is how it looks like. So let me quickly take you through this response, right? So within human answers, you would be able to see the modified response, right? The modified input that is provided by the workers. Okay, so we can basically search for that 205 that we modified. Okay, so let me search for it. So here, as you can see, this 105 was modified with the 205 value, and this is the human input. And then apart from human answers, we would have the human loop names. So this is basically the UUID that we have generated as a part of the human loop name, or this could be any name that you can provide. Okay, apart from human answers, you would be able to see the input content. And then here we have the AI service request. So basically it says what was the input that is provided. Okay, so here we have the S3 bucket reference. Okay, then the configuration of the human loop. So that's basically your AI service request. And then we have AI service response. So this is the default response from the Textract that you basically get. And then here we have the human task activation condition results. So this basically defines that which parameters triggered the human review workflow. So here you would be able to see the conditions that basically triggered the human review workflow. and then we have the selected AI service response. Okay, so guys, this is how the response looks like, and this is how you can basically trigger the human review workflow based on certain conditions for the key value pair extraction using Amazon Textract. So basically, it's quite easy to integrate the human review workflow as a part of the overall Textract workflow for key value pair extraction. So guys, that's all for this section. In this section, we are going to talk about Analyze Expense, which was announced by AWS. So recently, AWS has launched a specialized support for the automated processing of invoices and receipts, and it is called Analyze Expense. So basically, Analyze Expense is the part of the Amazon Textract service, and it is specially designed to work with invoices, receipts, and expense related similar documents. And that will basically enable the small or medium businesses or enterprises to process receipts and invoices at scale as a part of their any existing process or any new process that they want to have in place within their organization. Correct. So basically on top of that, it uses machine learning to understand the context of invoices and receipts. So it can efficiently extract information from receipts that have different structures without any additional templates or any additional configuration. So it's just the simple API call that you pass on the image and it will return the response in the form of JSON. So it's that straightforward. So here we don't need to have any additional templates or any sort of configuration. Okay, so apart from that, at this point of time, Analyze Expense does not support asynchronous operations and A2I integration. So maybe that is something that AWS can have in place in future releases. So now let's have a look at which fields Analyze Expense supports and is able to detect at this point in time. So these are the list of fields that Analyze Expense is able to detect in the form of key value pair from the given document. So for example, vendor name, receiver address, total, subtotal, due date, product information, right? So these are the list of fields that is currently supported by Analyze Expense API, and it will return this information in the form of key value pair that you can extract from the response that it returns. But apart from these fields, it can also smartly detect other relevant information too. So we will have a look at it in some time. Now moving along, now we are going to have a look at which elements it returns as a part of the response, and basically these fields will be the part of those elements. So these are the list of elements that it will return for the given document. So that is expense index. So it basically depicts number of receipts, invoice in a page. Then we have type, so that's the standard name for the individual fields. Then we have label detection and value detection. So that's going to be the key value pair, right? So label would be the fields that we just talked about, and its corresponding value would be the part of the value detection. Then we have pages, so it basically depicts the number of pages in the document in case you have passed the multi-page document. Then the page number, it will depict the page number on which the information is detected. Then we have geometry, so it will basically give us the bounding box information of the fields and its values. Then we have confidence score, so it will depict the confidence score of the detected information. And finally we have the expense row, so that is the purchased line item row or the product information, right? So these are the elements that would be returned as a part of the response in the form of JSON by Analyze Expense API. Correct. So now we have a fair idea that what it is able to detect and what we will get as a part of the response. But the most important part is the pricing. So let's have a look at its pricing. And it's gonna cost you $10 per 1,000 pages for the first 1 million pages per month. And if it goes beyond 1 million pages in a month, then it will be reduced to $8 per month, right? So that's the pricing. I think it's reasonable, correct? So now moving along. It's a quick look. So now let's have a quick look at the service in the console. So let me navigate to AWS Management Console, and we will navigate to Amazon Textract, and we will say try Amazon Textract. But here, as you can see, we don't see any option for the Analyze Expense. It's because right now in this region the Analyze Expense is not released, I think. So we need to change the region to maybe Asia Pacific Singapore. And here you would be able to see the option for Analyze Document as well as the Analyze Expense, correct? So now here, as you can see on the left panel, the document type that we have is form, and that's the reason we have analyze expense option disabled. But from this drop down, we are going to select the receipt just to have a look. So this receipt is of the grocery store, that is Whole Food Market, right? And now if we look at the right panel, then analyze expense is enabled, and here we have the information. So within summary fields, we have the vendor name, subtotal, tax, net sales, total, sold items, visa, paid, right? So this vendor name, subtotal, tax, and total are the part of the fields that we just talked about. So these are the fields that it is able to detect. But apart from these fields, it is also able to return the net sales, sold items, visa, paid, and such information, right, in the form of key value pair. And then if we look at the line item fields, so here it will give us the product item information with its price. So here we don't have the unit price mentioned over here, so that's the reason here we don't see on the right side as a part of the extraction. Correct. Now let's have a look at the invoice. So here we have the dummy invoice, and let's have a look at the extraction part. So within summary fields, we are able to see the fields that has been detected or identified by analyze expense, that is vendor name, invoice receipt ID, receipt date, receiver address. But apart from the fields that we just talked about, we have other information like phone number, PO box number, right? And then we have customer service number. So these are the information that it basically returns as a part of the key value pair. Now let's have a look at the line item fields. So here we have the product information, then the quantity and the unit price and the amount. So these are the line items that it detects. So it's kind of the product information. So this was the basically high level overview of how analyze expense looks like and what it is for. So guys, I think that's all I wanted to cover in this video, and basically in the next video we will have a look at the practical implementation of this. So we will have kind of lambda function in place, and we will set some trigger, and we will see how we can extract the information, and probably we will try out few more receipts, and we will see how it works. So guys, that's all for this section. In this section, I will take you through how to analyze any expense related document or a receipt and extract financially related information from the same using Amazon Textract's Analyze Expense API. And then we will also have a look at how we can parse the response and save the output of the same as the CSV within S3 bucket. So basically, Analyze Expense API analyzes an input document for financially related relationships between the text. So guys, if you are not aware of what Analyze Expense is, then you can refer to this video as you can see on my screen. So here in this video, I have covered a brief overview of the Analyze Expense API and its functionality. So I will post the link of this video in the video description. You can go through it from there. So now moving along, as a next step, we will go through this architecture diagram or the flow that we are going to follow throughout this video. So here the user will upload the financial document within S3 bucket, and this S3 bucket will trigger the Lambda function, and this Lambda function will invoke the Analyze Expense API, and it will pass the required information about the file to the Amazon Textract to perform the extraction. And once the extraction is performed, this Amazon Textract will return the response, and then this Lambda function will parse that response and extract the required information that we want in the form of CSV, and then it will upload that CSV file back to the S3 bucket, right? So this is the overall flow that we are going to implement in this video. Now here the relationship or the invocation between AWS Lambda function and the Amazon Textract is the synchronous invocation. Okay. So now as a next step, we will go ahead and create the S3 bucket. So navigate to AWS Management Console and search for S3. Now once you are within S3 Management Console, click on Create Bucket and give the bucket name, I would say Trigger Analyze Expense, something like this. And then I will leave rest of the option as it is, and then click on Create Bucket. Now here we have successfully created the bucket, so let's open that. So it's trigger analyze expense, and here I am going to create a directory or a folder with the name upload. So what we will do is we are going to set the trigger on this upload folder within this bucket. so that lambda function gets invoked whenever any file gets uploaded into this folder. Now as a next step, we will go ahead and create the lambda function. So search for lambda and navigate to lambda management console. Now once you are within lambda management console, click on create function and give the function name. I would say analyze expense lambda function. Okay, I will select runtime as Python 3.9 and within permission, I will select the first option, that is create a new role with basic lambda permission, and then click on create function. Now here, as you can see, the lambda function is created successfully. As a next step, we will click on configuration and click on permissions from the left panel and click on this role name. Now here we are going to add the necessary permission in order to invoke the Amazon Textract API successfully, and we would also require some sort of permission to set the S3 trigger. Okay, so for that we need to click on attach policies and search for AWS Lambda execute and check this. Basically this will provide access to the Amazon S3 bucket and the CloudWatch logs, and then let's search for Textract. So here we will check the Amazon Textract full access, but it's a good idea to create the custom policy and then attach that policy within this IAM role to narrow down the permissions. But at this point of time, we will move on with the Amazon Textract full access. And then once you are done with that, click on attach policy. So here we have successfully updated the IAM role with the necessary permission. So let me close this and go back to the Lambda function. Now as a next step, we are going to add the S3 bucket trigger. So click on add trigger and search for S3. As a next step, search for the bucket name on which we want to set the trigger. So in my case, it's trigger analyze expense. And within event type, I will say all object create events, and within prefix, I will say upload. And then I will leave suffix as it is and then check on I acknowledge. Finally, click on add. So this lambda function will get triggered whenever any file will get uploaded into the upload folder within trigger analyze expense bucket. Okay, so now as a next step, click on code, and here we are going to update the source code so that this lambda function can successfully invoke the analyze expense API. And once it returns the response, this lambda function should also be able to successfully parse that response and extract necessary information and store that information in the form of CSV back to the S3 bucket. Okay, to update this source code within this lambda function, I'm going to click on this upload from and click on Amazon S3 location. Now here I need to provide the object URL for the zip file which I want to load over here. So for that, I will navigate to the S3 bucket where I have already created the zip file and uploaded within that bucket. So let me look for reference bucket code, and within this I have created a directory which is analyze exp sync, and here I have this zip file which contains the lambda function code. So I'm going to click on that and copy the object URL and paste it over here, and then I will say save. Now this will basically load the lambda function source code from that zip file, and as you can see, the lambda function code is updated. Now if you also want to reuse the same code, then you can navigate to AWS tutorial code repository where I have already pushed the same code, and then you can navigate to this directory structure and look for lambda function.py in the helper directory. So once you download this code, create the zip file of that and upload that zip file somewhere like on some of the bucket. Okay, and then once you upload that zip file, you can copy this object URL and open your lambda function and click on this upload from Amazon S3 location and paste that URL over here. Okay, so this lambda function will load the code from that zip file. Okay, so this is how you can reuse this code. Now as a next step, I will quickly take you through this code at the very high level. So here we are importing a couple of packages from line number 10 to line number 15. Now on line number 19 and 20, we are creating the Boto3 client of the S3 and the Textract service. On line number 21, we are looking if there is a data in the event, and if there is a data, then we are extracting the required information, that is the bucket name and the file name. And then on line number 26, we are defining a structure or a path that where we want to store the CSV file. So basically we are telling that we want to store the CSV file into the same S3 bucket but within analyze expense output directory, followed by the file name underscore some random string. So basically all the CSV file will get stored into this analyze expense output directory. Okay, now on line number 29, we are invoking the analyze expense API where we need to pass the information about the file on which we want to perform the extraction. Okay, so here we are passing the S3 reference, that is bucket name and the file name. And then once the extraction is done, it will return some response and it will get stored into this response variable. And finally on line number 37, we are printing that response, and on line number 38, we are looping through the response which says response of expense documents, where we will get all the information. And then we are invoking the helper function, that is extract underscore kv, which is responsible for extracting the key value pairs. And then we are also invoking another helper function, that is extract line items, and this will basically extract the expense related information like which items the user has purchased with respective price. Okay, and these two helper function will extract the necessary information and create the CSV of that, and then it's going to upload it back to the S3 bucket. Okay, so this is basically the lambda function.py. Now let's go ahead and open helper.py. Now here within helper.py, we are importing a couple of packages, and if you look at line number 14, then we are importing pandas package. And as we know that lambda runtime does not have pandas package pre-installed, so for that we need to add the lambda layer for the pandas. Okay, and then on line number 17 we have the helper function for processing the errors, and on line number 30 we have the helper function to upload a file to the S3 bucket. On line number 34, we have extract line items, which is basically the helper function to parse the response and extract the necessary information that we want. Similarly, on line number 90 as well, we have the extract underscore kv helper function, which is responsible for extracting or parsing the response. Okay, and then it's going to create the CSV file and upload it to the S3 bucket. Okay, so this is basically the helper.py. And as a next step, as I mentioned, we have to add the pandas package. So let me scroll down to the layers and click on add a layer, and here we will select custom layers, and within custom layers I will select pandas 3.9 and I will select the version that is 1 and click on add. Now if you want to learn that how you can create the pandas package or the lambda layers, then I have already did a tutorial on the same. I will post a link of that in the video description. But if you don't want to create the lambda layers manually and you directly want to reuse what I have created, then you can again navigate to the AWS tutorial code, and within that you can look for lambda layers package, and within that click on Python 3.9, and here you would be able to find pandas underscore 39.zip file. Okay, so basically using the zip file, you should be able to create the pandas package for Python runtime 3.9. Okay, so this is how basically you can reuse the code and the pandas package in your lambda function as well. Now as a next step, we will click on configuration and click on general configuration, and here we will increase the timeout from 3 seconds to 10 seconds so that this lambda function does not get timeout while we invoke it. Okay, so click on save. Now here I think we are all set. So if we look at the flow, then we have created the S3 bucket, we have set the trigger, we have the lambda function in place, we have updated the permissions as well, and then we have also updated the lambda function code. Okay, so I think we are all set for the invocation. But before we go ahead and do that, let's have a look at the receipt that we are going to use in this video. So here, as you can see on my screen, I have this receipt which I have downloaded randomly from the internet, and this is how the output looks like. Okay, so here we have the summary fields, which basically contains the key value pair, and then here we have the line items where we have items that the user has ordered or purchased and its respective price along with the quantity. Okay, so as a next step, let's go back to our S3 bucket, that is trigger analyze expense, and open the upload directory, and let me drag and drop that file, that is restaurant receipt. So I'll simply drag and drop and click on upload. Now if everything is configured correctly, then we should be able to see another directory within this bucket with the name of analyze expense output. Okay, so here as you can see, so here we have analyze expense output, and within that we have the file name, that is restaurant receipt, followed by some random string. And here basically we have two files, that is keyvalue.csv and the line items.csv. So we will have a look at these files in a moment, but before that let's have a look at the response that we have printed within this lambda function. Okay, so let's click on monitor and say view logs in CloudWatch. So here we have the invocation log. So let's click on that. And here, as you can see, here we have the response that we have received from the Analyze Expense API. So let me copy this and open the JSON formatter over here and paste it over here and click on Format Beautify. So basically this is how the response looks like. So here we have the document metadata, then we have pages, and within expense documents we should be able to find all the information that we want to parse or the information that is of our interest. Okay, and within expense document we have expense index and summary fields. Okay, so basically we should be able to see two items within expense documents, that is summary fields, which contains the information about the key value pairs, and then we have line item groups which contains the information about the items that user has ordered or purchased with the respective price and the quantity. Okay, so let's have a look at one of the entity in summary fields. So here the very first entity is basically the vendor name, that is of type vendor name with the value of Crown Plaza. Okay, if you scroll down to another entity, then it says type of other, and then the label is basically TBL, that stands for table, I guess, and the value of the TBL is 39/1. Similarly, you can basically loop through the entities and have a look at, let's say, type other, and here we have the label detection as net total, and here we should be able to see the value of that net total, that is 5632. Okay, so basically we can parse through this response and extract the necessary information. Now if we look at the line item groups, then here we should be able to see the type as item, and the value that the user has ordered is burrata, and the value would be the price, that is of type price, and here we have the value detection, that is 16. And if we scroll down, then here we also have the quantity. Okay, and the quantity that user has ordered is 1. Okay, so similarly you should be able to find the rest of the entities in here. And then we also have the expense row type. Okay, so here the value would be 1 burrata 16 comma 00. So if we look at this receipt, then expense row basically contains the information about a single row. Okay, this whole row would be considered into the expense row. So as you can see, this 1 burrata 16 comma 00, and it would be same for the other entities as well. So if you look at the 1 pan D coca 3.50 expense row, then you should be able to find this information as well. Okay, so we will get an idea once we have a look at the CSV file that we have stored. Okay, so this is how the response looks like. Now let's go back to our S3 bucket and download this key value.csv. Now let me open this. So now here, as you can see, here we have the vendor name as Crown Plaza, and then we have TBL 39/1, net total, GST, total, CHK, subtotal, and all other information that has been extracted from this receipt. Now let's have a look at the line items. So now here, as you can see, here we have the line items.csv, and here we have the list of items that user has ordered with its respective price and the quantity. And then finally we have the expense row item, that is 1 burrata 16 comma 00. But here, as you can see, the price is basically 1 comma or 1.600, and I think it's kind of misclassified, but I think there is some sort of formatting issue in here. So let me open this file in the Sublime and double check. Okay, so here it is. So here we have the first item, that is burrata, and here it looks good, right? So I think there is some issue with the editor that I'm using to load that CSV file. So guys, this is how you can basically extract the line item groups or the summary fields or the key value pair and the expense related information from the uploaded document. So you can basically try it out with other financially related document. Okay, so guys, that's all for this section. In this section, I'm going to take you through a few of the best practices for Amazon Textract. So let's get started. So the very first point that we have here is that ensure that document text is in a language that Amazon Textract supports, and currently it supports English, German, Spanish, Italian, French, and Portuguese. For image documents, high quality image is recommended. At least it should have 150 dpi. Then ensure that the file format of the document should be in one of the formats that Amazon Textract supports. Currently it supports PDF, TIFF, JPEG, and PNG. Then avoid converting or downsampling of the document if it is in a format that Textract supports before uploading it to Amazon Textract. Ensure that the orientation of the document is correct. You can consider using the auto orientation solution to fix the orientation or any tilts before passing the document to Amazon Textract. Then the document content should be upright for better results. Then we have enhancing image document with image processing techniques like binarization might give you poor results in some cases, because I believe that Amazon Textract also apply image enhancement technique before doing the text extraction. So dual enhancement might deteriorate the image quality. So before you decide to move on with the image processing techniques like binarization, make sure you try it out first and then opt out for any of the image processing techniques. Then for table information extraction, make sure the tables are visually separated and are not overlapping with other elements, right? And should have a kind of less complex structure for better results. Then the upright text in the document will give you better results. Then make sure to use confidence score wherever necessary to make informed decisions depending on the business application or the business use case. And finally, we have the human review. So you can consider human review for sensitive business application wherever critical decision making is involved, like for example, financial decision. So guys, these are few of the best practices that I wanted to highlight. So you can consider this best practices to get better results while working with Amazon Textract. So guys, that's all I wanted to cover as a part of this video. Until that time, if you want me to do tutorial on any use case or service, then please leave them below and I will try my best to come up with a tutorial as soon as possible. And if you have any queries or comments, then please leave them below and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and see you next time. So guys, thanks for watching it till the end of the video, and now I am sure that you will be able to work on any relevant use case very smoothly and efficiently. Thanks for watching.